A very good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to each one of you in today's lecture. I hope that I am audible and I am visible to each one of you. I also hope that the audio quality is far better than the previous lecture. So, I'm extremely apologetic for the fact that in the previous lecture, many of the students had been constantly they had been raising an issue about voice quality. And I do believe that was some technical issue, definitely. But then I think that today things are looking more clear and you can see and hear me pretty well. That's what I hope. A very good evening once again. Huge welcome to each one of you. So, today is the second lecture for post independence India. Let me quickly take 5 minutes and revise what all had to be covered in the last lecture. And then we shall take up two topics today, right? And tomorrow, being our third and the last lecture for post independence India, we shall take a set of three topics tomorrow. Now, the reason why we have to summarize a period that is very, very long, post independence India, which means we are talking about Indian society, politics, economics, and culture as it was almost from 1945 onwards until perhaps 1990s when a lot of economic changes happened in India. So we are trying to cover many decades together. And yet the reason is we also know that most of these topics are taken care of by other subjects. So that leaves us with a dilemma that whether we should treat this as a separate subject or whether we should consider this subject, this period, as a part of economics, polity, or social justice. It is due to that dilemma that we have given, as of now, just 3 days for this whole period, given also the fact that your prelims are around the corner, and we do believe that prelims need to be prioritized right now. And hence, the lecture duration is 5 to 8, but I shall try to finish as soon as possible because I do strongly suggest that you focus on the prelims as of now. Having said that, in the previous lecture, we started with 1947 as India stood on the eve of its independence and the first Prime Minister, rather, one of the biggest contributors to post independence India, Sri Jawaharlal Nehru, had given his very famous speech called Tryst with Destiny, where he had expressed the happiness on the fact that India was now finishing with 150 plus years of British rule as a colony. But also, he did express certain concerns which a new leader would have given the massive challenges that lay in front of India. In the last lecture, we spoke about also how the post independence period, therefore, is a time when many things were happening together. So, more than a time for celebration, it was a time for tackling challenges that had come up like a mountain in front of the Constituent Assembly makers. The primary problem was utter poverty, huge unemployment, and very poor industrialization of India. Because British had left at such a situation where India was not only very poor in terms of its agriculture output, but also it was deindustrializing rapidly. Hence, we were experiencing a lot of poverty and a lot of unemployment. Next, we spoke about another problem, the massive illiteracy and lack of education. Now, we as a country, back in 1944 itself, via the Bombay Plan, the very famous Bombay Plan that was hatched by few Indian industrialist and political leaders, we had committed to follow the path of socialistic democracy, which meant a democracy where definitely through the system of direct representation, people will elect their leaders on the basis of universal adult franchisee, but also it meant that we are committed to the principles of socialism, which means that everybody will have an equal share in public resources. This is sometimes also known as redistributive justice. Now, imagine if British leave us in a situation where we are experiencing a massive poverty, where barely 2% of Indian population had a per capita income that was comparable with that of Europe. Apart from that, 98% people were reeling in extreme poverty. British left us in a situation where although Indian agriculture was providing employment to 85% of people. It was a livelihood of 85% Indians, but its contribution to the gross domestic product was less than 50%. Where, in terms of global GDP, Indian economy was contributing less than 20%, where in 1700 it was contributing more than 40% to global GDP. So, you see, in such a scenario, it was very important to create redistributive justice, which means as a new country, India was not in a position to take up free market capitalism. We had to make sure that the government provides distributive justice to people. Government is providing equal opportunities to everyone. The third major challenge was how to conduct an election of this scale, which had never happened in the world, where millions of electorates were about to select thousands of leaders to Lok Sabha and state legislatures, and most of these people are illiterate. The first task was to appoint an election commission, appoint officers who would train people in how to use electronic voter machine, in how to cast their ballot on paper, in making a right decision. What is it to elect somebody? So you see, the task was tremendous. And as I said, the sheer practice of making electoral roll, today we call it the electronic voter ID card. Back then, there were rolls in which names of the people were written, Indian citizens were written, who would be electing the government. Women were absent from this list. So after 2 to 3 recalculations, the list was finally prepared. Now, although challenges were massive, at that time India was also experiencing a very tough geopolitical situation. Why? Because as a new country, it was very difficult to understand how to maintain stability in the subcontinent, given that China's intentions were precarious. There was a reason why China's behavior was a backstabbing on India. It caused massive backfire. We are talking about the 1962 Sino-Indian War. Where did Nehruji go wrong? What happened really? Why did he miscalculate China's intentions? We are talking about challenges with Pakistan. Now, in 1947, on 15th August, not one but two countries were born out of the same subcontinent. This division was not just about Sir Cyril Ratcliffe coming and creating a line in between and making one India and then the Western and the Eastern Pakistan. It was not merely a geographical division, it was way deeper than that. We saw that how, in the previous lecture, we saw certain very disturbing illustrations of how refugees would live in areas of Delhi, Amritsar, Kolkata, Lahore. Zonal communalism was going on. Various religions were zoning and camping in particular areas. They were doing their self defense. There was a lack of food. People had to run, leaving behind their property. Women were abducted. So there was a lot of massacre and genocide that took place. Now, in this scenario, how to adopt a new policy with regards to the sharing of Indus water, with regard to border migration, immigration, with regard to distribution of religious sites? So there was a very difficult situation that the new Indian government was experiencing. And when in 1952 the first elections to Lok Sabha were held, it shocked many people across the world. Nobody would have imagined that an election on the basis of adult franchise that's open to everybody would be conducted in a country where everything seemed so impossible, and yet it happened. And indeed, Congress, due to its legacy of having participated in the Indian national movement, came out victorious, not only in the Lok Sabha, across all the legislative assemblies too. It meant that now, while Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru would be the prime minister, the man who was extremely good with diplomatic negotiations, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, would be the deputy prime minister, and he also acquired the charge of home minister. We also studied how he was the one who integrated the princely states, because before India's independence, there were certain provinces that were under British, while there were certain princely states that were under British paramountcy. They were not directly under British control, but they had certain internal autonomy. They had a degree of internal freedom, but they had to submit to British authority. We know that all these systems were created due to doctrine of lapse, subsidiary alliance, which you will study in modern history, of course. And this led to a system of paramountcy where the local prince or the ruler would have certain freedom, but he would have to maintain an army of the British, which he would pay for. He couldn't take any decisions with regards to his own wishes without asking the British, and hence, what would happen to all these princely states as the British withdrew? These would be the new orphans of the British government. So it was decided via the Mountbatten Plan that all the princely states now. So paramountcy is a system where a local state or a prince will enjoy some freedom, some internal freedom to administer the state, but not a complete freedom, because eventually he or she will be dependent on the British Raj itself. Where it comes to decisions like annexation of a new territory, selling or buying of a new territory, hiring an important official, spending on military, all of that wouldn't happen without taking British permission. It was almost like a system of submitting to the British, of course, indirectly. So they were under the British control, technically talking. Hence, under Mountbatten Plan, it was decided that these princely states now, they were technically about 550 and more. These many, they would be allowed either to join Pakistan or to join India or to stay independent. And in the last lecture, that's exactly what we studied. We saw how some of these states very easily came and became a part of India. I'm so glad myself. Good evening. Some of them very gladly and willingly became a part of India, but some did not. We saw in the previous lecture how certain provinces, certain princely states, particularly Kashmir. Remember, we spoke about Raja Hari Singh, how he was attacked by the Pashtun tribals and he ran to V.K. Menon, India's diplomat, India's foreign diplomat, and therefore Indian government gave him protection. Indian government signed a treaty of accession with him, and then Kashmir became a part of India, but not smoothly, because the Pashtun people, they settled in the part of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and till date, despite having gone to UNSC, United Nations Security Council, it is still a bone of contention between both the countries. We spoke about Junagadh, if you remember, one of the largest area in Saurashtra, Gujarat, but how the Maharaja was willing to join Pakistan, and how Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's negotiation eventually made it a part of India. We learnt about Hyderabad, remember? Azaf Jah VII, the Nawab of Hyderabad, who was a very cruel ruler, and hence what happened? He was absolutely very well reminded. Thank you. So now this Nawab was very tyrannical. He was brutal on people, specifically on the minorities. And eventually what happened? People from Telangana, the Telangana farmers or the Telangana peasants were the ones who rebelled against him openly in Hyderabad. The communists, thank you, they're so kind of you. The communists in Hyderabad rebelled against him. And then what did Indian government do? The Nawab had appointed a set of people who unleashed terror in Hyderabad, known as Razakars or Rajakars. These were people who were perpetuating atrocity, and hence the Indian government resorted to going and capturing Hyderabad. This was known as Operation Polo. Remember, we studied about one more place, Manipur. You might remember about Maharaja Bodha Chandra, how Maharaja Bodha Chandra was the one who was willing to become a part of India, but not everybody in Manipur was happy about it. Eventually, the Indian government signed an agreement in Manipur after, what did I tell you last time, if you remember? Manipur was the first place in India where democratic election was held on the basis of universal adult franchise. It was done because the people of Manipur had actually pressurized this Maharaja Bodha Chandra to conduct a free election. Once the result of the election was out, it was clear that majority of people wanted to become a part of India. But there were certain segments of the Manipuri Legislative Assembly that were not happy with it. Although the instrument of accession was signed, but till today, people have a complaint that not everybody in Manipur was consulted, not everybody in the Legislative Assembly was opinionated on this. And hence, do remember about that. Do remember it was the first place in India to have a democratic election, free and participative election. We studied about certain foreign territories. Now, also remember, my dear, yes, they wanted some internal autonomy. Now, also do remember on this note that a lot of students often get confused. How many states should we remember? So questions generally do not ask you, Please write about Operation Polo. That does come, but it comes in UP PCS, Uttarakhand PCS, Bihar PCS, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh PCS because questions are very direct there. UPSC would never ask you in mains questions that are so direct in nature. What's Operation Polo? What is Operation Vijay? Never. They will never ask you. Discuss the annexation of Jodhpur. No. Or discuss the annexation of Junagadh. Not like that. They will ask you very broad questions. For example, what were the challenges in princely state integration? Or they might ask you, how were princely states integrated into India post independence? Yeah, in all PCS exams, the questions are going to be very, very direct. They always are. That's why in the PCS exam, they say if you can pass prelims, you will definitely pass mains more comfortably because those people who are very well prepared for prelims are also the ones who do very well in the mains. Questions are very direct. It's like same thing is being studied for both. Now UPSC is a different ball game because for prelims you are studying direct facts, but for the mains there is nothing direct that ever comes. Hence, you need to do a very 360-degree preparation. I always tell my students that even if you study current affairs for UPSC, do not study it step by step by step. It's better to do a complete coverage of one current affair. Why? Because you should be in a situation to answer any question from that in prelims, including the map, and any question based on that in the mains. Everything is in your mind only. In mains, you will write a long answer, everything that you know about it. In prelims, you will pick up facts from that. So you cannot have a different approach for current affairs for the pre and for the mains in UPS. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so now a very good question. So how many states should we know about? That's what I was coming to. In your GS paper 1, if they ask you a broad question on princely states integration, just write the important ones. Do remember Hyderabad, Operation Polo was critical. Do remember Kashmir because the situation is ongoing. You might have recently seen in the news the 1960 Indus Valley Treaty is once again being invoked. There is a controversy when India stopped Ravi waters to Pakistan. So it's a very critical issue there. Plus, it also becomes a UN issue, and therefore you must know it in detail. Then the third state that's very critical would be Manipur, because Manipur violence is ongoing. And not only is the ethnic violence ongoing, but also there was a very big controversy, as I discussed last time, about Armed Forces Special Power Act, the AFSPA, the act of Indian government to impose law and order in disturbed area. This comes under the Disturbed Areas Act, the DAA. So very, very important. Hence, please do Manipur. Apart from that, you could choose between Jodhpur, Junagadh. Just 4 states are more than enough. You don't need to do all of them. Definitely not. But in the last class, we also spoke about certain foreign territories. Now, this is an important question. It's a separate question. They may ask you what were certain challenges of acquiring foreign territories post-independent or post-independent India or in the post-independence situation. So there you must know about Goa and Pondicherry. We spoke in the last class about both of them. We discussed how Goa was taken over through Operation Vijay, how Portuguese government that held Goa, Daman and Diu and Dadra and Nadra Haveli as an enclave, as a foreign enclave, refused to cooperate with the Indian government. That also created certain consular diplomatic tensions between both the countries, but eventually it was the Indian government who decided to walk in because Portuguese people were becoming very, very, you could say, aggressive. So Innocent Indians, Disturbed Areas Act. Indian government was actually trying to do peaceful negotiation, and any Indian who was doing a peaceful retaliation of Portuguese occupation was shot upon. Even in the Gulf of Kutch, a boat was shot upon in which civilians had died. This was all done by Portuguese, and hence India had to intervene. So via, in 1961, sure, I will. So in 1961, eventually the annexation of Goa was then accomplished through Operation Vijay. So please do study this. Slightly critical. I also told you all the Portuguese enclaves in India were known by a name. What was that name? It's in the PDF. Do remember that as well. Similarly, Pondicherry is quite important. It's very easy to remember, by the way, because Pondicherry and all its associated enclaves like Yanam, like Karaikal, like Mahe, all of these were a part of French enclaves, French occupied territory. Very good, very well said. Estado de India. Estado de India. Very good. Beautiful. I'm so glad you remember. So do remember, this is very important. Similarly, Pondicherry, all three areas were under French occupation, but French government was much more cooperative, and they said that if via a plebiscite the people themselves want to become a part of India, we have no problems. And that's exactly what happened. People did vote for integrating into India. It was for their own interest because these were Indian citizens by and large, and hence they knew that being a part of India would confer more rights on them, right? And always remember that whenever we talk about a union territory, now a lot of you may have heard the word regionalism. We will also study that a little bit here. Regionalism, as I told you on the first lecture, is a situation where people start demanding. Yeah, it's there. It will be covered in polity. So don't worry. You will have to matter, just that you need to remember all the important things. So now, do you remember that regionalism is that desire when people have too much attachment or love for a small region, not for the whole country? So therefore, regionalism in India has led to many kind of problems. One is demanding a complete statehood. This is very much in reference with union territories. Now, you might have noticed how from the beginning, most UTs have always wanted to become a state. Some people think, why? What's the problem in being a UT? The biggest problem is a lack of power, administrative control. You might also be aware of how in India, now which schedule is that? Can you answer this question for me? Which schedule of the Indian Constitution talks about state list, union list, and concurrent list? The division of administrative powers between union, state, and excellent. So we are talking about Schedule 7 here. Okay, I'll ask you one more question. Which schedule is known as the Coelho case schedule? Or Coelho case is associated with which Indian schedule? Which constitution schedule? Anybody? Yes, 9. Now, 9 is a very important schedule for you to remember for prelims and mains both. Now, why I say that is because recently there has been a debate in India about judicial activism. The Supreme Court is intervening too much in government functioning. That's what people are saying, that judiciary is becoming very paramount in India. It's kind of curbing the freedom of legislatures. In that light, let's remember the Schedule 9. Also, Schedule 9 Coelho case is very important for you. I'm digressing a bit, but let me remind you why is it so important, because Schedule 9 or the Coelho case also somewhere is related to a very big controversy, that whenever the government feels that we should hide something, protect something from judicial review, for them it was very easy to go and deposit it under Schedule 9, such as land reforms, zamindari, reservation. So what happened? Also remember the Indira Sahni case. Never forget that. Indira Sahni case said that in no state should the total reservation exceed 50%, no matter which category it falls into. OBC 20% fine. Scheduled tribes 7.5% fine. Scheduled caste 15% fine. EWS 10% okay, PWD 4% okay, whatever you want to do, but it should never be exceeding a total of 50%. Now, that was the verdict given under Indira Sahni case, always remember. Yeah, right. But then what happened eventually, as the quotas kept on growing and growing, all states have nicely crossed 50%. Some states, in fact, when we talk about Chhattisgarh, it's crossing 80% now. Tamil Nadu long back, Andhra long back, most of these states. What would they do now? It's not allowed. Indira Sahni case says you can't do it, but today it's a reality. So very conveniently, all the states would talk about Schedule 9. If it is under Schedule 9, judiciary cannot say anything on it. We have to close mouth the judiciary. But then the judiciary also did another interesting thing, and that is called Coelho case, that not all things will be shut from judicial review, and judicial review is again a basic structure of the constitution. So that is important. Here are two more things you should remember: the Bomai case and the SR Mills case, Minerva Mills case. Do remember. These are certain things I'm writing on the screen. All aspirants should be thorough with these, not only for polity, for GS paper 2, as well as post-independent India, as well as modern history. Okay? That's very critical. That's all. So this is 9 schedule, very important. Coming back to 7 schedule, which talks about division of administrative powers between the union, the center, and the states. Now, why do UTs have a dream of becoming state? because they know that very few administrative subjects are allocated to the UTs. Most of the important subjects either are in the union list or they would be under the state list. As recently, very important criticals. All this is relevant to post-independent India. Why? Why do I say that? Because in the last lecture I told you, although post-independent India is nothing but a mix and match, it's like a khichdi, it's like a hodgepodge between history, economics, social justice. It has no identity of its own. That's why people neglect it. But do remember it serves as a background. Yes, do remember it serves as a background to every other thing that we study in modern India. Every problem that we talk about today has started from this period. So therefore it's relevant. So do remember. Having said that, that's why UTs want to become state. So regionalism in India can take many forms. State to state conflict. UT want to become state. States want more finances from Finance Commission. States want separatism. That is something that we are going to study now. Precisely what? Regionalism. So now if it's clear, so far what all have we done in the previous lecture? Please revise that. Do remember thoroughly, integration of princely states. 4 states are enough. Only 4. Hyderabad, Manipur, Kashmir, and any one from Junagadh or Jodhpur. It's enough, more than enough. Do understand little bit. In the last lecture, I also spoke to you about economic problems of post-independent India. Although it is economics, equally relevant here. We spoke about problems of land revenue system during British. I explained you Zamindari, Mahalwadi, Rayatwadi. We spoke about agriculture problems in British times. We spoke about deindustrialization of India and hence land reforms. All land reforms we discussed. Stopping Zamindari, land ceiling 1961, abolishing Zamindari 1951-1952. We spoke about land consolidation. We spoke about reduction in rents. We also spoke about redistributive justice in the name of transferring lands to the cultivators, cooperative farming, all of that. So do remember. So here we come back to regionalism. Although in today's lecture, the main agendas would be reorganization of states on linguistic basis and green revolution. There is another topic that we shall cover tomorrow, probably, or today. Official language controversy in India. Now, till date, a lot of issues are going on even right now in India, that whether Hindi should be the official language or whether Hindi should be the national language. There is a huge difference between both. So let's understand that although India does have an official language, apart from all the 22 languages that are recognized by the 8th schedule of the Constitution, as per Article 343, 1 of Indian Constitution, Hindi has been and will be the official language of India. That is something we cannot deny. Let's also remember that as per Article 351, that technically belongs to Directive Principles of State Policy, DPSP. It says that the government should try to create conditions in which Hindi is accepted in India as the lingua franca. What is lingua franca? A language that is spoken to and referred to by a majority people in any country. That's the basic medium of communication. So this is something that we cannot forget. Although in India, not all the states, let's remember that from the very beginning, this is a broad thing I'm telling you, then we'll study this in detail either tomorrow or in the last today, because today basically I'll start with reorganization of states on languages, just to give you a brief idea of why language is such a big controversy in India, for many reasons. One thing is there is a multitude of languages in India. For example, just like in 2011 we had the Indian census, we also had the linguistic census. According to the linguistic census of 2011, there are total 121 languages that are spoken in India. No. These slides are new. In the previous lecture, we covered one portion. Today, we are covering another portion. Tomorrow, we'll cover the last portion. Now, what was I saying? I was saying, what is lingua franca? So, lingua franca is a language that is the basic medium of interaction by a majority. For example, globally, English is the lingua franca by a majority. So in Hindi, as per the directive principles of state policy, the government must create conditions where Hindi can grow up to become the lingua franca. From the beginning, now, A lot of people feel only right-wing policies, such as Shama Prasad Mukherjee. He was somebody who started the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, right? He brainchilded that. It started later. He started the this thing, the Swayam Sevak idea. The idea that in India, Hindi should be the majority language and most people in India should abide by Hindi. But this was the idea that was not acceptable to everybody. Because ever since in the area of Tamil speaking region in India, rather in the peninsular Indian states, the whole concept of anti caste, anti Brahmin, and anti Aryan ideology has got initiated ever since we had the Dravidian movement, under the aegis of Sri E.V. Ramaswamy, the Periyar. It has been a belief that why impose Hindi on non Hindi speaking states? Hence, from the very beginning, there were certain committees created by the Indian government which divided India into three categories A, B, and C. A category consisted of the states which had Hindi as their basic medium of interaction, such as UP, Uttarakhand. We can talk about Haryana, we can talk about Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar, all of that, Jharkhand. B consisted of certain states, for example, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and many others. C were actually the states where 65% of population and more spoke in a non-Hindi language. So these were typically the non-Hindi belts of India. So therefore, for the peninsula, south, this part. So what happened for the constitution makers and for the newly independent government? It was a big challenge how to impose Hindi on everyone. Many states were against it. Now in Tamil Nadu, DMK was one party that had actually initiated the entire anti-Hindi speaking thing, because they felt that local languages suit the best. And hence, from the beginning, there was a big controversy regarding how can you impose official language on us. So, although Article 343, Part 1 says Hindi will be the official language, still, there is in India an Official Languages Act 1963 that was passed much later. This has a separate element known as Section 7 that deals with how Hindi and English both will be continued to be used in India for official purposes. Plus, there is a Section 3 which says that English can be easily allowed by those states who do not use Hindi. Sometimes in the northeastern states also, if they want, they can adopt English as the official language, which is also true. Nagaland has English as the official language. So constantly, as soon as the government said, okay, English will also be used initially for 15 years. Later, due to public protest, it was constantly expanded. 15 plus 15 until it became indefinite. That until people are willing to change completely, they can use English if they want to. There is no blanket imposition of Hindi. So despite the fact that today, it is our Schedule 8th of the Constitution that talks about 22 languages that are recognized in India. Despite the fact that we have 121 languages, it is also true that the official language controversy is going on. It is manifested in the failing of policies of the Indian government, such as the National Education Policy 2020, which once again spoke about the three language formula. Long back it had failed in India, where the government says Hindi speaking states will definitely use Hindi plus English plus one more Indian language, preferably South Indian language. Similarly, non-Hindi speaking belts must use English, their own language, plus also try to inculcate Hindi, but people do not accept it. As soon as even the National Education Policy 2020 spoke about the three language formula in the line of Directive Principles of State Policy 351 for promoting Hindi, it was rejected. So till date, the controversy is on. So that is something we will discuss in detail tomorrow. Official language controversy, right? Because that has a much deeper implication in Indian politics. Agreed? But today we will technically talk about a little different topic, related of course. This is on the eve of independence. What was the language and state relationship? Rather, in other words, if I were to explain you, what was this whole thing about regionalism in the newly independent India? So far, you studied economic problem? Absolutely. Again, according to the Official Language Act 1963, all exams that are conducted at the central government level will be allowing you the use of Hindi and English. And that is also the reason why, and all languages which various states consider as their official language. That's the reason why UPSC is allowing you all 22 languages, not 221, 22 languages. Paper A, that is your paper A, that allows you a choice of 22 languages. It has to be done because there is no official blanket language that can be called national language. Remember, Hindi is the official language in Devanagari script, but it is not the national language. We do not follow national language. Absolutely. On that note, what is regionalism? Now, any word that uses ISM is an ideology. So, regionalism is that kind of political ideology which says my region comes first. Therefore, in polity, it is also sometimes called as negative nationalism. Tomorrow, if somebody gives you a word negative nationalism, please understand there is no national language, my dear. We don't follow the concept of national language, we follow the concept of official language and many other state languages alongside English. Regionalism is also known as negative nationalism because whenever somebody is trying to be regionalistic, they are only focusing about their own state interest. For them, their identity of belonging to a state comes before the identity of belonging to a country. Absolutely. They are the same thing. Therefore, very well said. Regionalism could be called negative nationalism. It could also be called sub-nationalism because it is a situation where regions are more important than national identity itself. Having said that, it can get manifested in many ways. It has many dimensions. Do remember, please, that I'll come back to the slide. Regionalism in India has always been a very, very multi-dimensional phenomenon. When I say multi-dimensional, I mean to say that it has cut across various kind of issues. For example, there is an element of economic regionalism, where people feel that state finance commissions should demand more and more budget from central finance commission. Typically, finance commission is Article 280, but when you talk about vertical devolution, where many students get confused about it. Vertical devolution means when the center government is distributing budget to the state governments, top to down, as per their need. This is technically covered under Article 270. So, one regionalism is economic, which says that states should demand more and more from the center for their own economic development, such as infrastructure, such as projects of economic beneficial nature, industrialization, and all of that. Another facet is very, very political. Under political regionalism, we talk about regional or state based political parties. These are the ones who actually fuel the ideology of political regionalism. Why? Because in India, we see everywhere the same thing, whether it's Aam Aadmi Party that is focusing on few states right now, like Punjab, Delhi, or whether you talk about Mamta Banerjee's party in West Bengal, whether you talk about BSP, Bahujan Samajwadi Party under Miss Mayawati, who was calling shots in 1990s due to its anti-Brahmin and pro-Dalit philosophy, or whether you talk about DMK, AIDMK, whether you talk about Telugu Desam Party. So all these in India, from the very beginning, have been regional parties that have always favored regional demands over national demands, and hence they have been able to convince people to vote for them because they create a situation where people believe that they understand them better because they are regional political parties. They will always fight for their cause, which central political parties or pan-India political parties will never do for them. And that is very evident in our electoral results also. There are certain states in India where regional parties have always won the election. The verdict has never changed. The whole idea is regionalism. In India, actually, as I told you last time, until 1957, it was Congress that used to win all the election because of sheer popularity. It was in 1957, in fact, that INC did not win in Kerala. This was a big shock. For the first time in Kerala, a communist leader win under the leadership of Sri Namboodiripad. This was the first evident expression of regionalism, that national interests and regional interests always do not go together. They do not have a hand in glove relationship. The third manifestation of regionalism could be linguistic, which we are also primarily concerned with. Now, linguistic regionalism is a phenomena where in one particular state it is believed that their language is suited to their own cultural heritage and their past, and therefore they shall not subscribe to any other language. And since people in a state are using one language, they also have similar interests in every other aspect. So this becomes linguistic regionalism. Sometimes it is also known as linguistic nationalism, where on the basis of a language, people are experiencing too much unity. This is not just an Indian phenomena, it can be a global phenomena too. Sometimes people from one region, they also experience other kinds of solidarities or unity among themselves, right? So this is known as supra-state factor. What is a supra-state factor? A lot of people think that people in one state feel united because of one language, but that's not true. Sometimes people talking in one language can be united with each other despite living in different countries also. Maybe geographically you are living away from each other, but still in your mind, because of same language, you feel too much cohesion and unity. This becomes supra state factor. For example, a group of Bengali speaking people living in Kerala, but still they feel a lot of affiliation to Bengal, or they associate more with Bengali population due to language similarity. Even if they are eating Keralite food, they are comfortable with Kerala culture, they work there, they settle there, they have a house there, but still, heart and heart, they associate with Bengali nationalism. So that's a typical example of supra-state factor. It happens everywhere. True, absolutely true. East Pakistan, West Pakistan. Ideology, religion was the same. But you see how things change. West side, if you have Urdu, right side, it is all about Bengali language. So they associate more with people of Bengal than people of Pakistan. In fact, linguistic divide was also one very big reason behind Bangladesh getting created back in 1971. You see, language always is deeply associated with your ethnic identity. So it's very, very important. Okay. So vertical devolution is, what is devolution? What do you mean by devolution? When you distribute something, it is called devolution. When I talk about Panchayati Raj, I will say political devolution. Devolution of power at the grassroots level. Similarly, when I talk about financial distribution of money from top to bottom, for example, I give money to somebody who works for me. She gives money to somebody who's working under her, and the chain passes on until it reaches the last person on the block. That's called devolution. Since in India, the system of financial devolution is such that Central Finance Commission under Article 280 will disburse funds to the State Finance Commission, and then they will distribute it to the state and then to the panchayats, right? So this is happening vertically, top to bottom. Hence, it is known as vertical devolution. There is also something that is called horizontal devolution. That is different. That is different. Horizontal devolution is an economics phenomenon. Very interesting though. Horizontal devolution means when there is a comparison done, that how much money to give to which state. One thing is money will be given to all the state, top to bottom, vertical devolution. Now, how to decide who will get more and who will get less? So there what happens, the state which has the highest per capita income or the state which is the highest performer, that becomes a standard. So it is seen that how much are other states distant from that in terms of achievement and per capita income. According to that, their need they are given. Also, there are many other features. Which state is more green? Which has protected its forest? Which has implemented more welfare schemes? Which has been able to coordinate and control its population? Which state has experienced a lot of education achievement? So, on the basis of achievement, also sometimes funds are distributed. Again, that's a big controversy because states are not happy. They feel day by day, the central government is reducing the state share of vertical devolution. It is keeping more with itself, all happening after GST. GST is the biggest reason. You must study this in detail. That why, once GST was initiated, this vertical devolution became a big challenge. States are so unhappy today because they feel that the government says everything is coming under cess and surcharge. It will keep it in its pocket, it will not give to us. So you must investigate that demand. We have covered this in one of the Hindu analysis sessions, I think 10 days before or something. Important topic. So language becomes a major cause of regionalism. Also, do remember that it is because of too much language affiliation that a country which is experiencing too much regionalism like India from the very beginning also begins experiencing the phenomena of separatism. Please do not get confused between separatism on the one hand and the word secessionism on the other hand. Please don't get confused. Because secessionism is a very different phenomenon. I told you last time in the last class, when a state or a region demands a separate country for itself, not state, separate country, such as Khalistan, Bodoland, Azad Kashmir. If you start demanding a separate nation, that's secessionism. It's an act of terrorism, Naxalism. Separatism is when you only demand a separate state for yourself. This could be on the basis of religion. Remember, separatism or demanding of a state can be on the basis of anything. One is religion. For example, Kashmir. That could be one thing. Second thing, it could be on the basis of language. In India, it has always been on the basis of language, remember. Third, it could be on the basis of natural resources. Hence, many reasons could lead to separatism, but typically always the biggest reason in India at least has been language. Now how and why? Let's investigate. Now if demanding a separate state is regionalism, typically called separatism, how did it start in India? Well, in India, before the British came, at that point of time, Indian subcontinent itself was divided into many dynasties and sub-dynasties. Whether you talk about the Maratha Empire, a massive Indian empire, it had a language of its own. Whether you talk about Mughal Empire, it was a polycultural empire. Many languages were used. India has always had linguistic diversity. It has always had that. So during Mughal Empire, also before the British came, we had Arabic, we had Turkish, we had Sanskrit, we had Hindavi, we had Urdu, we had Persian. Many languages were coexisting. Plus the Dravidian languages in the south, tribal languages in the northeast. Similarly, once the British came, things changed a little bit. Why? We must understand that until revolt of 1857, the British were not treating India like a complete colony. It was only economic imperialism that was going on. The main purpose was to trade with India and take as much profit as possible. In the last class, I explained you the model of profit making, the model of economic drain. Was it clear with everyone? Did everybody understand that? In the last class, we spoke how British did double devastation, double damage on India. One agriculture, one industry. Remember, we spoke about how in agriculture, no modernization was done, raw materials were taken away, commercialization of agriculture was done, high revenue demand existed. Yeah, you remember how industries were destroyed. Raw materials were not going to agriculture or industry, but it was going to London. All products in London were coming and getting sold here. All our merchants and Indian artisans became jobless. They all had to reverse migrate. They went back to agriculture disguised. Seasonal unemployment increased. Land fertility died because of indigo and other cash crops like tobacco, tea, coffee. Lot of slavery started with plantation agriculture. All of the problems contributed to that. Now, if British have completely drained us, in 1857, the nature of imperialism changed. Why? Because you know that 1857 was the first war of independence. That was for the first time the British government tasted what is the concept of Hindu-Muslim unity in India. Technically, during 1857 revolt, it was the sepoys who initiated the mutiny. But eventually, landlords, Indians who were upset with the British government, including agriculture laborers, including petty industrialists, artisans, including government petty officers, Mughal king who became a symbolic leader of the rebellion, Bahadur Shah, it was a clear picture of Indian unity, which shook the British government in terms of the number of British people who died and who were assaulted, in terms of how Indians completely defied all the law. That shock resulted in a change of policy because in 1858, when the first act was passed, the British Administrative Act was passed in 1858, for the first time, the governance of India was transferred from East India Company, which was just a company by the British, to the hands of British Parliament. It was a transfer of power where not the company, but the British government today became the owner of India. They were the ones who will own India as not just economic but political colony also. This led to complete colonialization as a fear that once again the same mutiny can happen. And from this point started a new ideology also. Very interestingly, a lot of people ask you a question that if regionalism started in India only after British, why not before that? We know that even before British, India was divided into many different languages. In the northwest frontier, people were using Indo-Greek languages, Persian languages. In the heart of Mughal Empire, we just spoke about how many were there. South India, so many were there. Marathas had their own language. Then why were they not fighting? Well, because language already was not the only factor why they would fight. They were always fighting, but they were fighting for power and control of territory. Language was never an issue of fighting because every dynasty had an English. Exactly. Things changed after British because British were the ones who took advantage of this linguistic divide, and just like they did for religion, for language also they started creating a massive divide and rule. And how did they do that? Well, they realized that because Hindu Muslim are united, let's divide them if we have to succeed in capturing the whole India. So what they did initially when they came, they never bothered about India or development or language. Yeah, that was done politically. 1909, Morley-Minto reform, separate electorate. 1919, once again, Montagu-Chelmsford reform, separate electorate. That is different. Linguistically, how did they divide and rule? Very interestingly, before 1857, in India, in most of the states, Mughal Empire's culture was continuing, and British also never said anything. They were happily doing economic drain of India. They never bothered about anything else. 1857, when they realized that unity is a problem, they decided let's break it both ways. One, let's create communalism in India. Now, let's remember communalism in India has also been gifted by the British. What is communalism? Fight between one and more religion. They were the ones who created it. Communal consciousness was there before the British, but communalism started with the British. Similarly, linguistic regionalism was initiated by the British. Why? Once the British want to break the unity of Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus, what they do is after 1857, they start persecuting Indian Muslims. Why? Because they thought that the revolt of 1857 happened under the symbolic leadership of Bahadur Shah. So they presumed it to be a Muslim-led rebellion. And they said that let's break the unity. As a result of that, they stopped the use of, or they banned the use of Arabic, Persian, and Urdu in all colleges and government offices. What happens? What happens to all the Muslim educated youth who were working for the empire, who were working under the Mughal court, who were studying in colleges, who were writers, poets? What happened to them? Who had already learnt Urdu or some kind of Arabic, Persian, or Turkish language? It was abandoned. They only replaced it by English completely. Obviously, they suffered big time. They became unemployed. That unemployment continued for a long period of time, where because of language alienation, it was the young Muslim youth who lost not only government jobs and opportunities, but also any prospect of higher education, with English being the new medium. This is how they persecuted the Muslims, and they created a kind of divide between the Urdu speakers and the non Urdu speakers. Second thing they did was, once they understood during 1905, partition of Bengal, when Swadeshi and boycott movement was led by Hindus this time, that it was not Muslims that were creating a major threat, it was the Hindus that were a bigger threat. They started Hindu persecution. And how did Hindu persecution happen? Hindu persecution happened by Muslim appeasement. Then came this separate electorate for Muslim, supporting people like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, supporting movements like Aligarh movement to suddenly spread English education among Muslim youth. Why? Were they concerned? No. Now they wanted to do again divide and rule. First you repress Muslims, now you repress Hindus. And how do you do that? You just favor Muslims and make them understand that they are separate from Hindus. They want separate electorate. They need Western education, English education. They deliberately promoted people like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, whom they knew would spread the ideology of modernizing Indian Islam, not Hinduism. So the entire freedom movement, the entire social religious movement became communal and religious. You see, that's how the British perpetuated this ideology. So typically, linguistic regionalism started with the British after 1857. And also, there was one more reason it started. The British government, when they had made different states in India, they had done it only on the basis of administrative convenience. They wanted to see their own administrative ease. How to do administration. Larger areas were clubbed together. Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, the biggest tax giving area was clubbed together. They never bothered about how these big provinces True. That's all because of British, provocation, actually. Yeah. Now, what happened? All the provinces were simply put together without understanding the language needs of people, the cultural differences of people. For example, Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, they all represent very different culture and very different linguistic ethos, but they were put together because they were very fertile. Similarly, Madras, Telugu areas, they were clubbed together without understanding that Tamil speaking community is linguistically different from Telugu speaking community, Malayali speaking community. Similar thing was happening in Western India, whether it's Maharashtra or Gujarat of modern day. They were put together as Bombay. People never understood the difference. British never understood the difference between Marathi, Gujarati culture or language or ethnicity, anything. Same torture was done on tribals. It is true that Indian tribals are a diverse group. You will study this in the chapter on tribals and social justice. They are a very diverse group. They don't represent same kind of features. Even one state in India, for example, Assam, or for example, Meghalaya, Manipur, there are multiple different kind of tribes and clans that stay together which have different dialects, different religions. British did not understand that. They thought everybody who's underdeveloped is one. All tribals are same. So all Northeast was put together. This kind of inappropriate, insensitive, language blind creation of states was bound to have its side effect one day. And this side effect started immediately after independence. The decade of 1940s and the decade of 1950s saw a massive retaliation against this kind of mindless divide of territories where people felt persecuted because their linguistic needs were not getting met. Not only were they experiencing clashes among each other because different language and religion groups were put together, they were also disturbed because it is impossible to identify linguistic minorities if people are haphazardly put together. This lack of sensitivity on the part of Indian states division manifested in a big wave of regionalism that hit India during 1940s, shortly before independence. And how did it all start? It started with the fact that now partition has taken place already. And with the partition, already the country is experiencing deep poverty. The new government has to understand that there has to be a development in remote areas, whether hilly area, whether northeast areas where population per density is too much. But development in terms of industry, colleges, medical science is very, very poor. So the new challenge was tremendous. But how to distribute the benefits of development? Which state would need how much share, rather which community needs how much share? It cannot be done unless one linguistic community represents one state. It was leading to ethnic violences. Eve is the evening, in short, the day of independence, the night before or the night of independence. That was the challenge that we felt. So therefore, the new government on the one hand was feeling, the new Indian government, the Indian National Congress was feeling that let us create more unity in India. That is why it had spoken about things like the three language formula, that once we will allow all the languages to be used and slowly, slowly we will shift towards Hindi. They thought that, but it did not happen because already in the Tamil speaking region of South India, protest had started very, very tremendously against this insensitivity of language identity, against imposing of Hindi. As I said, it reached its peak when people were extremely angry about their economic backwardness and their community's backwardness, about a lack of identity, and about forcefully having to learn English and Hindi. And that manifested from the area of modern day Tamil Nadu itself and modern day Andhra Pradesh itself. So now what happened? With the demand sharply rising, it was now in the 1950s, where in the Telugu and Tamil speaking regions of then Madras province, a lot of people started demanding a separation of Telugu speaking community from Tamil speaking community. There was one senior Congress leader. He was also a Gandhi follower, a Gandhian, a very senior uh, leader, a very revered leader, respected leader. His name was Poti Sriramalu. He was the person who spearheaded, or rather, who was the torch bearer of the movement which demanded a separate Telugu speaking area from the state of Tamil. Now, given that these demands were increasing day after day, yes, day after day, the government decided to investigate in the issue, and the Congress government thought, okay, immediately we cannot listen to this demand that creates states on the basis of languages. The linguistic demand of state, or the linguistic reorganization. Why reorganization? It is already there. States are already there, created by the British. Now they want to be reorganized on the basis of language. For the government, it's not an easy decision because the government was scared. The modern, or the freshly elected government was worried that what if this creates more lack of unity, or more communalism, or more divisiveness in India than before. They could not immediately listen to the demand, and hence they appointed at least a series of three committees before they could take a serious decision on the issue. The first such committee was known as Linguistic Provinces Commission. This was elected or appointed in 1948 under the leadership of Justice S.K. Dhar. Therefore, popularly it's known as the Dhar Commission. The purpose of Dhar Commission was to inquire or investigate how logical is it in India to create states on the basis of language. Is it feasible? Is it possible? Is it viable? Hence, what happened? It was also decided that integration of princely states, as it has been done by the Indian government and the British, it was purely on the basis of ad hoc arrangement. Ad hoc arrangement means a haphazard temporary arrangement, something that is not well thought of. Okay, so ad hoc arrangement, and hence there was a need of permanent arrangement that could be more satisfactory and acceptable to people of the country. After studying the issue in great detail, the only thing was that Dhar Commission submitted its report. And the report said that we cannot. It refused the idea of creating states on linguistic basis. It was believed that this is too divisive rather than uniting. Plus, it was too complicated. Because sometimes there is a problem, a unique problem in India, that not only language, there is a dialect also. Now, dialect is something that has no written script. It is not a written language, but it is spoken by a lot of people. For example, in Karnataka, if you see, although Kannada is the main language, but in boundaries, in peripheries of the state, there is Konkani being used, there is Marathi being used, there is Tulu being used. Tulu is another variant of the language. So in this case, what to do? According to Dhar Commission, if in one state there are multiple language speaking people, then what to do? Or what if people from one language are spread all over the country? Yeah, for this batch, it will be done in 3 classes. The purpose is prelims exam. So after prelims exams, we will again expand it not to 5 but to 6 classes. So right now, what we are doing is an overview of entire post-independent syllabus, going in detail wherever important, understanding in which subject we will study it, the broad topics. After the prelims are over, we will expand this to a series of 6 lectures where we will also include a little bit of art and culture post-independence and maps post-independence. Okay. Having said that, it was also felt that what if people from one language community are spread over the subcontinent? Then how would you club them together? Seeing these complexities, the Dhar Commission rejected the idea of making states on language. In fact, it suggested something different. It said that states should be organized on the basis of administrative convenience, pretty much like the British had done. The only thing is, British had done it with imperialistic interest. The modern Indian government should do it with reference to financial convenience. That please divide states on the basis of backwardness and their need for industrialization and finance. Plus, create it on the basis of governance and administration. Whichever area, square kilometer, is easy to be administered, depending on natural resources, proximity to the sea, development, we will create states. But it rejected the idea of linguistic basis. Now, this also was not taken happily by the Indians. The community at large was not satisfied with the report of the commission, and therefore the government had to re-again think. The government also had to reject its recommendation. Eventually, the government appointed one more commission in 1948. This is sometimes also known as Three-Leader Commission. But why is it known as the Three Leader Commission? Because it was led by three senior leaders of India at that time. One himself, Shri Jawaharlal Nehru. Another was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. No, it is not about that. It is that you will be notified about that. But the point is that since majority of classes are targeted towards prelims right now, that's why. That's the reason why the detailed coverage will be done post prelims, because most of the priority classes are prelims classes right now, right? So that's the reason. Even after the prelims, you will have both. For your 2025 batch, you will have not only mains lectures but also lots of prelims lecture. It's both combined into one. You will be notified about the second batch. Definitely. Notification will be uploaded soon. So now it was led by three leaders: Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. No, not yet. It has not started yet. The second batch will be notified to you. Yes, yes, definitely. All these were appointed after the initial merging was already done. That was the first task at hand. Some was done simultaneously and some was done before that, as and when. Because until princely states were integrated, there was never the concept of one integrated India. So most of the states were integrated before. The ones who were remaining, few of them, the negotiations were going parallelly alongside this exercise was happening. Because when you talk about language, both the controversies broke out together. One was official language controversy, which I briefly touched upon and will explain in detail tomorrow. One was official language controversy, which language should be the Indian official language, Hindi language problem. Second controversy was reorganizing states on linguistic basis. Both controversies took side by side. Okay. Having said that, this was a three-leader commission. Third leader being Pattabhai Sitaramai, another very famous and senior leader of the Congress. This, interestingly, also, yes, the same man. Exactly, he's the same man. Exactly, he's the same man. Absolutely. Now, this committee, the JVP committee, completely once again dismissed the idea of reorganization on a linguistic basis, because again, Congress leaders felt that it was too divisive and risky. To further fuel regionalism, it would lead to negative nationalism in India. It will increase if we divide states on linguistic basis. But the problem is that people were still not happy with the submission. They were not happy with the result, verdict. And hence they also said, okay, fine, temporarily, as of now, we do not have a verdict on saying yes to this. But in future, we may re-examine the issue in case need demands, because public demand towards division was already high. Now let's remember, parallelly, the organization or the protest in Andhra Pradesh had started. As I said, the senior Congress leader, Poti Sriramalu, Gandhian freedom fighter, was somebody who was spearheading the movement for a separate Telugu speaking area to be separated from, that time, the state of Madras. Earlier, Tamil Nadu was known as Madras, and it consisted both people from two language speaking communities clubbed together ad hoc. So now he wanted separate Andhra. That's why the movement for demanding a separate Telugu speaking area, or the movement or the demand for a separate Andhra Pradesh, is also known as the Vishal Andhra movement. Okay, this is referred to as the Vishal Andhra movement, under which the demand for a separate Andhra Pradesh comprising of a majority of Telugu speaking people was openly staged. So he took a hunger strike. He sat down on a fasting, and with popular support, he said the fast would be broken only when we get a separate Andhra Pradesh state. Now, typically, the protest also got intensified because people were very unhappy with the decision of the JVP committee. Repeatedly, they felt that the government is being insensitive to their linguistic identity need, and hence, after fasting for more than over 50 days, about 56 days, Poti Sriramalu died. He succumbed, and once he passed away, the demand was becoming extremely aggressive, too much for the government to take. There was violence, there was complete public disruption, and therefore, as a result of so much public demand and so much aggression, the government had to give up, the government had to accept and succumb to the needs of the people after seeing violent protest, demonstration, devastation of public property. The life came to a standstill. 1953, the separate state of Andhra Pradesh was finally created, characterized by a majority Telugu speaking people finally. Now let's understand that although Andhra Pradesh now became the first state, rather the first Indian state, to be created on a linguistic basis, it's we just have to remember 1953. Let's not go into too nitty gritty of the. It will be too much to remember. You can look it up, but it's too much to remember. So I would say just remember the year 1953. It was created on linguistic basis, the first state post independence in India to be created on a linguistic basis. Please do remember that there was another state but which was created even before independence, and that was Odisha. Back then it was known as Odisha. The name was changed much later. This is before independence. Now, once Andhra Pradesh is created, it is setting a major example. What happens if the government listens to one demand? It will now, yeah, in 1930s, long back, Odisha was the first one. Now, if one state will be created on linguistic basis and people's aspirations will be met, what kind of an example and a yardstick will be created for other states in the country? We know that India is a poly. It is just the difference of a name. Odisha was the old name. Much later, the name was modified and made Odisha. Yes, in the basis of Odia language, true. Once Odia language got the status of one of the 22 languages of the eighth schedule of the constitution, the name corresponded with Odisha. There was another change done. Okay. In Odisha, the protest came from the local leadership itself, that for a complete separation from the areas of Bengali speaking and Bihari speaking, Bhojpuri speaking provinces. That was the purpose why, even much before independence, it was given its status, because there was a complete cultural difference. The demand was getting very violent, total Naxal. That's why it was very underdeveloped. Even today, if you see, Odisha is one of the states which has the most highest kind of poverty in India after Bihar. If you see the multi-dimensional poverty ratio, also if you see the most backward tribes in India today, particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India, the PVTGs, they also belong to Odisha. So there was a very poor social economic development that led to the demand. Whenever regionalism happens, typically it is either on the basis of language or it is in the basis of backwardness. It's only when, it's only in these cases that people of a region feel very insecure. Otherwise, the demand wouldn't happen. There is a reason why until 2014 we are having different states. Even today, the demand has not stopped. Now, you might have heard about Saurashtra. I'm sure you know that it's a huge area in Gujarat. For a very long time, the demand for a separate Saurashtra has been raised. Plus, there is also a huge Tamil speaking community that is settled in Saurashtra. Similarly, we can talk about Vidarbha. We can talk about Uttar Pradesh. We can talk about, once again, Uttarakhand, Gorkha land, right? Lot of issues are still going on. Whenever an area feels backward, immediately it results, even in Karnataka also. Northern Karnataka is socially economically much lesser developed as compared to southern Karnataka. So Uttar Karnataka or the North Karnataka also has a demand of separation. These are very common in India. The reasons always being either social economic poverty, backwardness, or linguistic divide. There is hardly any third reason responsible. Okay. So having said that, if now Andhra Pradesh has come into being in 1953, it is just opening a new Pandora's box. It is now, we will definitely talk about the positives and the negatives of regionalism. We will definitely talk about that. Okay. So now, once Andhra Pradesh comes in 1953, it sets a precedent. It sets an example for many other states to follow the same path. Hence, what happens? The government had no choice now. If Telugu speaking area is getting separated as Andhra Pradesh, what is remaining? The Tamil speaking area, and hence the Tamil speaking area became Tamil Nadu. So the states came as twin, you can say, developments. On the one hand, you are having Andhra Pradesh. On the other hand, you are having the remaining Tamil speaking areas that are consolidated into the Tamil Nadu state. So both these developments took place, and now the government had a bigger pressure to face. Many other states started demanding the same thing, that if language divide is feasible for one, then why Marathi and Gujaratis, all of them are staying in Bombay? Then why all the tribals are staying in Northeast? Those issues again became legitimate, and therefore the government, under a compulsion, had to appoint another commission in 1953. This is the most important and the most critical one to remember. This is known as Fazal Ali Commission. Fazal Ali Commission was once again a tri commission because it was led by three well-known visionaries: Justice Fazl Ali, behind whose name the commission had its name. Second was K.M. Panikkar, and the third is H.N. Kunzru. These three people together sat on the Fazl Ali Commission, and for the first time, a commission gave a verdict that was acceptable to the Indian population as well as to the government. It was a mutually acceptable recommendation. The recommendation was that yes, languages now will be the main criteria or the basis for reorganization of states. It will be done. They said yes to it. They had to say yes to it. Why? Because Andhra Pradesh was already there. Tamil Nadu was already on the verge of existence. How could they say no to other demands? It is setting a big precedent now. Government cannot contradict itself. So the commission said yes, but the commission also said that the biggest fear that was in the mind of the previous committees, Dhar committee, JVP committee, why they rejected the demand? They were afraid that this will create divide among people. So this commission sought out a middle solution, a diplomatic solution. They said that agreed, we will divide states on linguistic basis, but on one condition: one state will not use only one language. That is not acceptable to us, given that India is a polylinguistic state. Now, polylinguistic and a polycultural state is one where there is a diversity of language and culture. Therefore, it said that we will not follow a system where every state will have its own unique language. We will, in fact, follow a system where states will have to abide by certain languages more than their own official language. That was the whole purpose behind the three language formula. That since every language is a part of India's culture, you can have a state on the basis of your linguistic identity, but it doesn't mean you have a disregard for other languages, because obviously Hindi being the official language, some of Hindi has to be incorporated anyhow. That was also said. Now, four major factors were suggested by the Fazal Ali Commission before taking any deeper decision. One was that unity and, you can say, solidarity or unity and brotherhood in the country will not be sacrificed. Just because we are allowing states on the basis of language, it doesn't mean India's sovereignty will be under threat, because we are allowing only one thing, that is separatism. Now, please understand, some people say, is it constitutionally valid for new states to get created? Yes, it is. Because from Article 1 to Article 4, that is exactly what our constitution talks about. India, that is Bharat, shall be an indestructible union of destructible states, which means that although states can get destroyed, they can change, name can change, area can change, big to small can happen, two can be put together, one can be divided further, but boundaries of the country cannot change. That is very dangerous. That is secessionism, not to be permitted. But until you are under the same national boundaries, if due to some reason you have to change or modify states, it is pretty much valid, because it is a constitutional, it's coming under the basic structure of the constitution. It's allowed. So therefore, we will allow, but we will not allow any kind of secessionism. Only separatism is valid. Second thing, they said that this step is not being taken to divide people, but to further promote diversity of language and culture, because ultimately we have to make sure that there is unity in diversity. As per Jawaharlal Nehru, although there is diversity, but let's maintain unity in that. Let's allow people to enjoy diversity within a certain concept of unity. Third thing is, financial, economic, and administrative considerations will also be used here. Not because one state has been made only on language, it doesn't mean that whenever it comes to funding that state, other concepts like how backward is it, how much natural resources is it, that will not be taken into account. No. Even things like river water, jute mills, cotton mills, fertile soil, agriculture land, property, all of the natural resources shall also be divided as per some logical formula. Plus, the government will also see how administratively viable it is. A state has to be an administratively viable area for the country to govern. Apart from that, welfare of people in that state will be a responsibility of the national government, which means it is further insisting on the quasi-federal nature of India, that although states have are now being given autonomy in the sense that they will have an identity, it is the demand that's being fulfilled through the commission, but it doesn't mean that they will have any other kind of autonomy. No, the seventh schedule will remain. The domination of union over states will continue. We will have a quasi-federal structure with center taking care of all the financial and welfare needs of the state. That will not change. So therefore, what happened? Once this was done, there was some kind of violence that was experienced in the Bombay area. Now, Bombay area at that time was a bigger, very big land that constituted both Maharashtra, Gujarat. Both communities lived side by side, plus many other communities. Parsi community was also very dominant in the area. So, the States Reorganization Commission, or the Fazal Ali Commission that happened in 1953, it gave its verdict. On the basis of this verdict, the government agreed to it, accepted it, and inspired by this and its characteristics, its features, the government finally passed the most revolutionary act in India, the States Reorganization Act, just 3 years later, 1956. Okay? So, states reorganization shall be passed in 1956. Now, once this is done, all the states in India, wherever the need is felt, will be created on the basis of language from now on, keeping in mind the same demand of the Bombay speaking people where violence was already happening for separation. Finally, in 1960, the division was done successfully. In 1960, the Bombay area was divided into the Gujarati speaking people who went to Gujarat with Ahmedabad initially as the capital, not Gandhinagar. And similarly, Maharashtra was created separately. Initially, it was decided that Mumbai or Bombay, as at that point of time it was known as Bombay, would be independent. There was also a fight about which area will have Bombay, Gujarat or Maharashtra, but later it was then put as the capital of Maharashtra, getting transferred to Maharashtra. So both the states, Maharashtra, Gujarat, took birth in 1960. It is fragmented. Make it according to headlines. One was economics, study that under economics, land reforms. The other is this what we are talking about, social justice. You will study the same thing in social justice. Similarly, modern history. Most of the things like, you know, federalism and how it initiated is modern history, plus all the politics that's going on, which government is getting elected, how successive elections are getting held, defection against it, when was the 10th schedule created, what motivated the 10th schedule, what were the Indira Gandhi's policy, what was emergency, all that you will study under polity. Similarly, Jawaharlal Nehru's non-alignment movement, how India took a neutral stand during Cold War, all that will come under IR. So the topics will be covered here and there, just that it's a story, it's a flow kind of thing. Just remember that you will cover this in other subjects. Wherever you find something new, you can just jot it down. After all, everything is post-independent India. Whether you study economics or social issues, we are talking about an era, not a subject. So the only difference here is that post-independent India is not a subject. It is a time period that is being studied under different subjects. So here we are just drawing up a chronology. What were the key episodes that happened? Obviously, many things happened, but these are the major ones. Economic problems, official language. Today we are studying states reorganization. Last time princely states we had studied. Tomorrow we will study little bit NAM, little bit official language. We also little bit Indira Gandhi's politics, defection, and all of that. So we are studying a period actually, not a subject. You can make notes wherever you find something new. Otherwise, you will finish it in other topics only. So now Maharashtra and Gujarat are also coming in 1960. Once again, a new demand begins in other states also, such as typically the Northeast, where various tribals were forcefully put together under one big Northeast. They were not okay with it. They wanted separate area for every tribal. Similarly, just like in 1960, you had Gujarat, Maharashtra. In 1966, another important development happened, that Punjab and Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, all these were segregated with Chandigarh getting created as a UT initially, Himachal getting created as a UT initially, and Punjab and Haryana, two separate states, 1966. Punjabi speaking population separated from Haryanvi speaking population, Hindi speaking population, and Haryanvi speaking population. Similarly, certain UTs, Himachal Pradesh, hilly area, Chandigarh, these also took birth. During this time, as I said, everything is happening side by side. It's a period, it's not a subject. So we studied about how Operation Vijay happened and Goa was captured from Portuguese. That was already going on side by side. So somebody had asked a very interesting question, that had the integration of princely states happened before language organization? Yes and no. Some were already integrated, some it was continuing. It's a period, so lot of things are happening. As I said, for this subject, you have to take a top to bottom view. Like you are looking from the top, and so many things are happening like a game. In economics, something is happening. In infrastructure, something is happening. In IR, as a new country, there are so many things to do. It's a 360-degree coverage of all the problems that are going on. Similarly, Pondicherry, because it was a place that was not only the easiest connecting point for two states, but it also comprised an area which was dominated by both language speaking people. Financially, also, it was the most well planned city, and hence it served as the administrative capital of two states. Punjab is separate, Haryana is separate. At that point of time, Himachal was created as a UT, later it became a state. Similarly, Chandigarh continues to be a UT, but it serves as the administrative capital of both Haryana and Punjab. Okay, that's what. Now, similarly, 1962, Pondicherry was liberated from France, it became a part of India. So, all these places are happening side by side. It continued until much late. In the phase two, tribals were the people who staged a massive demand. For example, in the northeast, due to giving tribal diversity and once again their language diversity, tribals wanted to be divided into states based on their unique language and subculture. No, it's not like that. Religion was not something that was kept in mind while Punjab was segregated. It was primarily language. Now, in India, religion has never been the basis of creating a separate state. You know why? Because when you start demanding a separate state based on religion, it becomes a very critical problem known as communal regionalism. Now, communal regionalism is a very huge challenge. When people start demanding a separate state on the basis of religion, typically it will never happen. Because in every state of India, you have multiple religions living together. Obviously, there is a majority, a minority, but still everybody is living together. You can't allow that. So, therefore, whenever communal regionalism has taken shape, it has never led to creating of states, never separatism. It has always directly caused demand for secessionism. For example, Kashmir. Today, Khalistani movement. So whenever communal religion divide joins hand with state divide or separatism, it becomes a new formula, secessionism only. That is not allowed in the constitution, it will never happen. Azad Kashmir, you can't allow that. Khalistan can't be allowed. Kamtapur Liberation Organization, KLO, can't be allowed. Maoism can't be allowed. You can't allow that. Right? So that's why even that person, Swami Nityanand, who has made Kailasa, now how will you categorize him? One student asked in the offline lecture, that time I was teaching this topic in social justice, and he said that, ma'am, you are saying it is not allowed, it is not allowed. What about Swami Nityanand? See, I'm saying somebody who's a terrorist, he never asked for permission, right? You do you do agitation and you do protest when you want to demand something. Now, if somebody without demanding or telling somebody ran away and made a new country, I don't know what kind of secessionism is that. It is a kind of terrorist secessionism. Then we don't know what to do. Okay, so it's very difficult to characterize that theoretically. It could be said as an act of terrorism or whatever, but still he has his own bank, he has his own currency, he has his own Supreme Court. So no comments on that really. Now, phase two was northeast, and hence demand from the tribal areas led to one demand was diversification of tribal language. People wanted a separate state for separate tribe and separate language, but also because of very, very poor social economic condition of Northeast. Now, whenever we study social issues, we always talk about tribes, and from the very beginning, British had a very bad relationship with Indian tribals. There was a reason why most of these tribals were known as criminal tribes by the British. You might have heard about Santhal rebellion, Munda rebellion, all of that. It was the British who from the very beginning were very antagonistic towards tribe. Most of them were known as criminal tribes. It was only in 1951, when the new Indian government was elected, that Jawaharlal Nehru immediately decriminalized these tribals, removed the stigma of tribals being called criminals. Today, till today, these tribes are known as decriminalized or denotified tribal groups. You might study this phenomena very often. People think tribals are all the same. No. Tribes are different, scheduled tribes are different, PVTG is different, DNT is different. DNT are also backward, but they are decriminalized tribe. Indian government supported them by decriminalizing. British had criminalized. So much atrocity was happening, connectivity was very poor, geography was very different. They were hardly experiencing any development. Nothing of like that. Therefore, Northeastern Areas Reorganization Act came much later in 1971. Under that, most of the union territories, such as Manipur, Tripura, Meghalaya, they got statehood. Why did they get statehood? One, denotified tribal groups. Denotified means now they are notified as non-criminals. They are not criminals. They called them criminals because they did not understand their culture. Now, most of the tribals in India were like Sapera tribals, those who are snake charmers. Some of them were gypsies. They are walking on the rope and they are doing some kind of magic trick. They are singing, they are migrating, they are nomadic. For British, all this was too much to understand. They had never seen this. It's a very Asian culture for them. So it's very easy when you find a culture very foreign and very difficult to understand. You criminalize it. There was one more reason, that these tribals were very poor. As I said, slash and burn agriculture, jumping, traveling one place to another, no proper rights. Plus, British also imposed forest reserve areas. When British created forest reserve areas, they refused the tribals to come into the forest. Most of the forests in North India, I will give shortly, most of the forests in North India were cut and they were used for timber production. What will happen? You are cutting forest. Remaining forest you are creating as reserve areas, national park, industry, forest police has come. You are not even allowing them to enter the forest. How will they eat? They used to then steal. They had no choice. They used to go and steal. They became dacoits, most of them. So what did the British respond by? By calling them criminal tribals. Absolutely. By calling them criminal tribals. Railways came. 1853. Does this remind you of something? First railway was created in India. 1854, first postgraph service was created in India. This came at a very big price. For railway tracks, how many forests were cut? So what happened to these tribals? Complete story of displacement and poverty, right? Plus, on top of it, lack of accommodation because language is not known. What they did, they responded by saying that you are criminal tribals because you steal money. So this stigma also kept them backward for a long time. Indians also were scared of them. They would never talk to them. It was only after decriminalization that today also it is a separate category, denotified tribals, but that stigma is still there with them. They have improved now, but that stigma continues. It's very easy to say that now nobody will call you criminal. But once a tag is received, it continues for ages. So that is also a big complexity about Indian tribals. And just to give them more rights, more local participation in the governance, plus more administrative subjects are there in the state list. To give these tribal areas more administrative subjects, more participation, and more funding through Finance Commission, they were all given the status of a separate state, all of these. Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh was earlier known as Northeastern Frontier Province or Northeastern Frontier Area, NEFA. Much later, it was known as Arunachal Pradesh. All these were tribal areas, UTs. They all became states by 1987. Interestingly, in 1987, even Goa became a full-blown state. A lot of people get confused here. No, I haven't forgotten. Break will come. Nobody will snatch your break. Break is your birthright and you shall have it. You are not less than Bal Gangadhar Tilak. When it comes to my students, they also have that mentality. Break is my birthright and I shall have it. Nobody is less than Bal Gangadhar Tilak. I understand that. Not the same really, because secessionism is the demand for a separate country or attempt to make a separate country. Sedition is when you actually do something that violates a law regarding national security. So it is more a legal term, sedition. Secessionism is more of a cultural political phenomena. They would mean typically related things, but technically different things. Now, similarly, also remember, you give me time, I'll give you break. Now you are becoming Subhash Chandra Bose. Focus, please. Just 10 more minutes. Okay. So Goa also got independence in 1987. Now people often get confused with this. Goa got liberation under Operation Polo in 1961, but it became a full-fledged state of India in 1987. Before that, it was a union territory. Please remember, right? So now slowly, Northeast was also becoming an area composed of various states, right? So Northeastern Frontier Agency, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, you can see all of these got separate statehood. But Delhi is a unique condition. While talking about Delhi, in Delhi, the problem of regionalism is still continuing till date. Now, recently, Aam Aadmi Party, your, who's that gentleman? Uh, Delhi Chief Minister, Shri Kejriwal. Now, he said that the government is not giving us a full statehood. Delhi has been demanding various governments, first Congress government, now Aam Aadmi Party, they have constantly been demanding that Delhi is a UT, it wants to be made into a state. The reason we all have understood, I think by now, more funds in the Finance Commission, more laws to govern from the state list and concurrent list, which are not available to UTs, plus a little bit more autonomy that comes by being a state. So all of that now Delhi wants. Okay. It's right here. In 1972, Manipur, Tripura were granted statehood. Apart from that, Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Arunachal Pradesh were then later brought out of Assam and further created into states. So all the list you will get here. Northeast, okay? And same is applying to Delhi. Now, Delhi, the demand is ongoing. Please remember, this is a new kind of regionalism where a UT wants to become a state. See, a union territory is an area that is directly administered by the central government through generally a lieutenant governor. Governor. A lieutenant governor is answerable to the central government, and then the laws are administered under a UT. Now, because a UT is not a state, it will not get powers to make laws on its own. Most of them are dictated by the center. State is not like that. In a state, a state is an area which has a separate legislative assembly. If it's a bicameral state, it will also have a legislative council. A state is also an area which has more population. More population, therefore, not only separate state government and legislative assembly, but typically also panchayati raj institutes. They have separate panchayats and gram panchayats and municipal cantonments and all of that. Apart from that, state has every right under 7th schedule to make laws under state list as well as concurrent list, in which both state and union can make laws. Plus, local people can contest in the elections, hence they have more power, more say in local policies. Besides, a state always is more integrated when it comes to having a typical language. There are, but states will not only have a legislative assembly, they will also have detailed panchayati raj institution, which is also something that will get funds. States have more rights to collect taxes on their own, you can say, through their own panchayats, through their own urban local bodies. Both are there. ULBs are there, panchayat is there. It's a much more detailed administrative mechanism. So being a state means more political power, more financial power. That's why most of the UTs demand of becoming a state. But before we take a break, which is your birthright, quickly, the problem of regionalism has not ended with 1987 Goa becoming a state and northeastern states becoming states. It has continued. But because we absolutely understand the fact that in India there is a lot of heterogeneity. Now you might think, what is this heterogeneity? Heterogeneity means a lot of variation. Among in what? In development, economic and social. We all know that recently the Niti Aayog has released 2023 multi-dimensional poverty index. Bihar tops that index, followed by states like Odisha, Jharkhand. The reason is that while certain states are experiencing a huge industrialization, typically Tamil Nadu, Gujarat now, or Karnataka, or Kerala, there are certain states like Bihar, Jharkhand, even for that matter Uttarakhand, and certain northeastern areas which are still very, very backward when it comes to industrialization. Poverty in terms of how many people have access to banks, fertility rate, many things, health policies. So therefore, if there is so much variation in the development of various states, naturally some states will always feel left out. This whole fear of being left out, rather this whole fear of being in a state that is being left behind, triggers more regionalism. Therefore, back in 2000 also, three more states were created. Now today you say that Chhattisgarh is a separate state. It came out of Madhya Pradesh in 2000. It was felt that the tribals of Chhattisgarh are often neglected because they don't have a separate area for themselves. We can cover it in the part of northeastern segment itself. It came very, very late as 1980s, in fact, Sikkim also. Similarly, Jharkhand came out of Bihar, Uttarakhand came out of Uttar Pradesh. It is state consciousness. It is state consciousness. And yeah, you can say extreme state consciousness. There's nothing wrong with the word. It is too much regionalism. So yeah, extreme state consciousness, or rather you can say extreme regional consciousness is a better word, because state is a political word. What people are actually dying for is giving legitimacy to a region. They want to make a region into a separate state. So it's more of a regional consciousness. 2014, Telangana was made out of Andhra Pradesh. Till date, the battle is going on. There are so many monuments and buildings that are a bone of contention. Every year, there is a new commission that's sitting between Andhra and Telangana to decide. Further, there is a conflict in Telangana also. Similarly, Uttarakhand. Till date, there is a fight going on whether the state belongs to Gadwalis or Kumaunis or Gorkhas, Nepalis. It's not clear. Similarly, you talk about water conflict, Punjab, Haryana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kaveri water. You talk about Shivamoga. Areas also are a bone of contention, enclaves. For example, Shivamoga is in Karnataka. It's a Marathi speaking area. So Maharashtra wants it from Karnataka. It has again been a bone of contention between the both. So these are continuing. That's wonderful. These are continuing like constantly. Then in 2019, in the light of the sheer secessionism, lack of internal stability of Jammu and Kashmir, the government took further step. The further step came in the form of questioning an independent constitution of the state of J&K, characterized by huge problem of secessionism, characterized by huge problem of people fighting Shivamoga as well as Belagavi. Shivamoga as well as there are certain enclaves in Shivamoga also which are a severe bone of contention between both the states. Severe bone of contention. Now, Article 370, which provided a separate constitution for the state of Jammu and Kashmir, given that it came in a very controversial situation. We had spoken about how, despite accession into India, how Pakistani tribals have settled, the Pashtuni tribals from Pakistan had settled in the area of the POK, or the Azad Kashmir region, and that's why a separate constitution was governing it until when the government revoked it. And today, what has been done? Yeah, the border issue is severe between India Pakistan. It's a UN controversy. So therefore, Jammu Kashmir was split into the union territories of Kashmir and the union territory of Ladakh. Definitely it impacts. So many states definitely impact the national integrity, the national sovereignty. Why? Because any day, if you say regionalism, typically it is associated with anti nationalism, sub nationalism, sub state features, supra state features. It is definitely disabling. Why? Because to create a consensus on natural resources, border dispute, population dispute, state finance commission versus Central Finance Commission, it is always very difficult. That is why today Niti Aayog has thought of something very new. Why were the 5-year plans eventually stopped, and why was the Planning Commission in 2015 officially, or 2014, replaced by the Niti Aayog? Why? Because today the government feels that the only way to come out of this problem is cooperative federalism. Another very good word for cooperative federalism, marble cake federalism. Now, questions come on this directly sometimes. But this is only in polity, Niti Aayog, or economics also, you will study the same topic. Today, when the government says Niti Aayog is a think tank, it will do a long-term planning, not 5-year planning, breaking down into year-by-year accomplishments. Marble cake federalism is what we talk about, a dialogue-based approach. Similarly, integration councils, please do study about them. We will cover that in social justice. Integration councils were created in the form of zonal councils in India. They were created long back in 1960s, but much efforts were not made to further create progress for them. Zonal councils comprising Northeast, Southwest. to represent a dialogue format between states so that fighting stops and more development can happen. Now, in a country like India, the ugliest manifestation of regionalism, just to avoid just to avoid a situation where Jammu and Kashmir and the people living there would be treated as non-Indians, would be treated as something that is separate from India. The government believed that if JNK is an integral part of India, then why a separate constitution is needed in the first place? Why do we need it? In fact, the separate constitution initially also was a temporary arrangement. One final decision had to be taken. So today, at least, there is lesser infiltration. Today, there is more economic development when people are freely allowed to go there. Terrorism has come down because if you have created this into a UT, it is directly controlled by the central government now. So naturally, the anti-army attacks, the stone pelting, the infiltration has come down in a major way. So primary purpose was to create better democracy for those people there, better development for them, also to create more peace and security in India. Until it was a bone of contention between two countries, how would peace come? So today also there is infiltration, but dramatically the result has improved. It has come down a lot. So let's remember the ugliest side effect of regionalism in a country like India. Now you asked a question that so many states, how do they impact the national integrity? They completely block the economic progress. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard, but definitely you must have heard about son of the soil ideology. Have you heard about that? So much hurry of break. Seriously, is it so tiring? I thought it's like a story. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not giving you your birthright. 7 p.m. to 7:10 p.m. we will take a break. Is that fine? Is that fine? No, break I have to take because it's Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Break we will take. 7 o'clock to 7:10 we'll take, and then we'll finish the lecture. 8 whenever possible. I mean, whenever we are done with the topic. Okay. Okay. Around 6:55. Okay, just 5 more minutes. Let me quickly finish this. Before Green Revolution, we'll take a break. Green Revolution is very easy anyway. Now, son of the soil ideology. What is son of the soil feeling or ideology? It is a complete manifestation of anti-nationalism, regionalism, where people from one state feel that we are the child born in the soil, and nobody therefore has a right to share our natural resources or the benefits of economic development. This is the ugliest aspect of Indian regionalism. When you say that so many states are causing problem, they do. It's a very technical reason behind it. Let me give you one thing before that. In 2019, there was one more thing that was done. The UTs of the Union Territories of Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu were merged together. Now they are not separate, they are one, leading to about 28 states and 8 UTs in India today. Okay. This is the typical list that you have here that you can follow from the PPT. There are certain more demands that are going on. We'll talk about it and then we'll come to Green Revolution. So before that, when people say what is the ugliest situation coming from regionalism, son of the soil ideology, wow, let me explain quickly. So I'm sure you must have heard of the word demographic dividend. What is demography? Population. What is the word dividend? In economics, you must have heard dividend means profit, benefit. Demographic is population. People say that having a huge population is bad. Today, India has taken over China as the largest and the most populous country of the world. Is it a good thing? Yes or no? Because having a big population is not bad. If your population has a very huge DD, demographic dividend, what is demographic dividend? In any country, if the majority of the population lies between the age group of 15 years to 49 years, we call this as young population. Young population is always called the working age population. Any country, yes, any country which has a large working age population, therefore, will always have a more benefited economic development because the younger your population, the more they can work. You have more consumption and you have more production. So economy will always grow, right? Yes, it will always lead to better national income, better GDP, and a better overall economic performance, better industry performance also. This working age population, therefore, is our human capital. So let's understand having a big population is not a problem. Having a poor demographic dividend or a less demographic dividend is a bigger problem. Even if you have huge population, but if it is a DD, it's good. If it's not a DD, it's bad. Any society in which majority is not working age, like India, has a very big demographic dividend. It's a good thing for us. According to United Nations Population Fund, it is believed that until 2041, India will continue to enjoy a big demographic dividend, a big DD. Today, the average age of an Indian is 27 to 28 years. Very, very young, which means we have a huge human resource, but then why are we backward? Why are we backward? So we are backward because, let's understand today what is going on in most of the societies. Rather, let's take it this way. What happens is that in any society, you might have heard about the theory of demographic transition. According to the most logical model, in every society, population keeps becoming older and older as time passes. Why? Because automatically, if you are a modern society, you are living in technology times, like so much modernization, so much industrialization, the death rate in society becomes less. Less people die. The birth rate becomes even lower. It becomes even lesser than the birth rate. Why? Fertility control, population control, family planning, extreme expensive life, late marriageable age, more women empowerment, more jobs for women, breakdown of joint family, less impact of religion and culture, more independence, more live in relationships, acceptance to homosexuality, better medical science, hence more education. All these lead to a situation where people will not die, they will live longer. And people will not take birth also, because birth rate is very, very low in India today. As per the 2011 census, which was the only state to experience a negative growth of population. Anybody knows about that? As per 2011 census, which state in northeastern India was the only state in India to experience a negative growth of population? Investigate and let me know. Similarly, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, all of them are experiencing a fertility rate which is 1.6, 1.5. But what should be the perfect fertility rate? 2 children per woman. The fertility rate of 2.1, it is known as total fertility rate, TFR. The total fertility rate should be 2 child per woman. If every woman has 2 children, then population replicates itself without any need for fertility control, without anything to worry. Population will always be stable. The world has already achieved 2.1. India has achieved 2.0, even lesser than desired. What a paradox. People say India is growing more population than China. No. India today is also having a very less birth rate. But the only problem is India is diverse in every way. Our diversity is something that causes complexity at every step. You see, in India also the problem is that we have a massive demographic dividend. But just think for a moment. How is this being possible? When I'm saying that so many states are having negative population growth, people are not having children. How is it possible? Very good. How do we say that in India, most of the states today are having below 2.1 fertility rate? India has already become more, you can say India has already gone lesser than the global desired total fertility rate 2.1. It is 2.0. We are not having so many children. Then why are we so huge? Because in earlier, from 1920 till about 1990, we have had too much fertility rate. Today the problem has changed. While most of the states are having negative population growth, people are not having children, there are certain states, yes, like UP, Bihar, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, which continue to have a high population growth rate. Why? Because technically talking, fertility rate is directly in proportion with poverty. The more poor a population, the higher fertility rate they will have. That also has a reason. The reason is not as easy as we think. Poor communities will have the highest fertility. Why? One, insecurity. Child mortality and infant mortality is very high. Children get born because of lack of vaccine and food, they die very early. The lifespan is not very much. That's why people have more children out of insecurity that during old age we should have somebody. Similarly, another reason is lack of awareness regarding family planning and the earning hands theory. Poor communities feel the more children they have, the more they can earn. They believe in child labor. These are certain reasons. The poorer you are, the more children you have. So today in India, we are living in such a complex situation where certain North Indian states have a high fertility. Sometimes in states like Bihar and UP, it is going as high as 2.8. Until recently, 10 years back, it was 3.1. But look at the paradox. The states which have the highest fertility rate will also have the highest demographic dividend. And the states which have the poorest fertility rate will have lowest demographic dividend. But the states which have a higher demographic dividend are poor. They have no scope of job. And the states which are very industrial, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, they have very high job opportunities, but they have very low birth rate. So what should you do? What should be the solution? What should be the solution? Solution should be to allow laborers and workers to migrate from areas of high demographic dividend to areas of low demographic dividend. And this is exactly where regionalism hurts us. Son of the soil ideology. UP and Bihar workers getting beaten up in Tamil Nadu. Shiv Sena in Maharashtra telling people from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh that if you enter, we will hit you, we will harm you. States are demanding for regional reservation. Maharashtra, recently controversy was going on. Provide seats to Marathi people in government jobs, in corporate jobs also. Haryana has already started giving jobs to local people in private sector jobs. So what is going on? On the one hand, demographic potential is more in poor states. Use them. Rather than using them, you are not allowing them to come. India will suffer, right? The states which have development have less population. The states which have no development has huge potential. So this lack of interaction, coordination, and you can say unity is what really kills Indian prospect. You see, it is very lucky for us to have a huge demographic dividend because globally countries are becoming grey societies. What are grey societies? Grey societies are called silver economy. Please learn. Silver economy. Silver economy is an economy where majority people are old, above 65. So all the consumption is being dictated by old people. And all the production is also very low because there is no workforce. Why is Canada inviting people from the world to come and migrate? Why is Russia saying that Indians should come, we will give you easy residence and easy property? Why Siberia is getting, why North Korea is, why South Korea has zero fertility? There is hardly any child being born in the last at least 2-3 years after COVID pandemic. Similarly, Japan, grey society, silver economy. All these developed countries are facing massive problem of work labor. Work is there, labor is not there. What happens in this case? They have to depend on labor from China, India, Vietnam, Africa. One day it leads to culture reversal. People will go settle, make community. What will happen to local people? They will finish one day. You see, it is completely changing the global order when people migrate permanently from one region to another. So these are certain issues that are unaddressed in India. If you have too much regionalism, linguistic, Karnataka is the biggest example. Recently, the government of Karnataka has said signboard law. Every signboard in Karnataka should have more than 60% Kannada language. We will not allow too much Hindi, too much English. How will business people react to that when most of the customers are North Indian? When all the drivers of your Silicon Valley are coming from states with a higher demographic dividend, what will you do by banning Hindi and English? You see, it is this kind of regionalism that leads to poor economic, lopsided economic growth in India. Came COVID pandemic and lockdown, most of the laboring states, states which provide labor, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, labor stopped coming. Not only because of pandemic, because of regionalism and assault. What happened? Metro stations are, metro infrastructure is there, people are not there to work. Expensive labor you get locally because the right labor, the hard-working labor you are not allowing. So this is the ugliest prospect of India's regionalism. This is also one answer to the fact that why, despite having a huge demographic dividend, it is not utilized. In India, we have it. It is unused. Poor education, poor technological skills, culture, religious biases, and the biggest problem, regionalism. Now, before we take a break in 1 minute, similarly in Uttar Pradesh, further there is a demand. Awadh Pradesh, Paschim Pradesh, Vidarbha. From the areas of Nagpur in Maharashtra, a demand has been separate Vidarbha should be created. Delhi demanding full statehood. Similarly, Saurashtra, I already spoke about it. I also said Gorkha land. From Uttarakhand, West Bengal, the Gorkha land demand is also rising. So the demand for more and more states, more and more funds, and more autonomy is ongoing, making regionalism an ongoing process in India. So I hope you understood everything we did so far. Now you can have your birthright. But please don't say 15 minutes because, as I said, The protocol right now is to end the class as early as possible until 26th May 2024 in light of our prelim students. So therefore, if you come in 10 minutes, we can finish early. We have to complete only one segment. If you come after 15 minutes, it takes longer. Now decide what you want. 15 minutes, 10 minutes. What kind of birthright you want? Bigger birthright, smaller birthright. Majority wins, 10 minutes. Perfect. Okay, fine. Go take a break and come. Welcome back to the session, everyone. Welcome back after the break. Just a quick topic on Green Revolution, post which I shall take your adieu and then catch up with you again tomorrow on three more interesting topics, as I said, from the post independent period. Why do you find them dangerous? Is a bigger question. You think that I'm lying and I will take more 2 hours lecture? You think because I'm going to discuss difficult topics? Why? And kindly explain dangerous. Okay. Having said that, let's begin with one more topic that is typically associated with your economics, actually, Indian economics. But also, why we are covering it in this era is because while the concept could be for economic growth, but the root of the problem was completely political. Not really. It has not been implemented. Only UCC has been implemented, Uniform Civil Code. That too in the state of Uttarakhand is what we are seeing right now. And there is controversy ongoing. CAA, the government has said, but not blanket implementation or technical implementation has not been done yet. So, coming back to Green Revolution, as the name suggests, it was a complete reorganization. It was a complete reinvigoration of India's agriculture system. How and what was the need for this green revolution? So let's understand that back during independence period, we have quite repeated many times that the British government had left us in a very paralyzed agriculture state. And the biggest paradox was that while 86% people were living on agriculture, but the disguised and seasonal unemployment was very high. Now, typically India has three agriculture seasons: Rabi, Zaid, Kharif. But back then, immediately in the post independence period, the overall production of Rabi crops, Kharif crops, was so low that for most of the needs, for example, wheat, a critical Rabi crop, similarly barley, or similarly mustard, talking about, say, Kharif segment, we can talk about rice here. So, all these things, Bajra, India was completely dependent on imports. When you talk about wheat and rice, US was one of the key importers here. India was borrowing wheat for its population from US because we were not self-sufficient in agriculture. Completely it was degraded. Less dependence on monsoon, unpredictable monsoon, very small fragmented agriculture holdings. Besides that, continuation of zamindari system, despite being abolished, it was non-officially being done. I told you about the Benami transfers. The government did land sealing. It was redistributing property to poor farmers, but in reality, the rich farmers were doing Benami transfer. They were doing black marketing to keep their hold on lands. Similarly, caste was a very big reality of India. Because of that, a lot of lower caste people were continuing their work as agricultural labor. Poverty was immense. Self sufficiency was zero, let alone export sufficiency. In that case, during the period of Shri Jawaharlal Nehru, although Indian agriculture continued to be a major problem, the government responded by dedicating the first 5 year plan completely to agriculture growth. The government spoke about giving subsidy to the farmer. Now, when we say that government is giving subsidy to farmer, we are trying to say that the government provides minimum support price to the farmer. What is minimum support price? Let's understand that government, in order to help farmers achieve basic income and continue farming, it sometimes gives them a fixed rate. And at this fixed rate, the government buys the product of the farmer or farmers produce. The government is a regular customer. It buys farmer produce at this fixed rate, which is often on the higher side. It is higher than the market rate. And the government will give this rate irrespective of whether market is less or good, there is monsoon or no monsoon, demand is less or poor, the government continues to provide that. It will help in farmer because it gives the farmer regular standard income. Also, it protects the farmer in the case of, very good, as you're saying, famine or flooding, or in the case of any crop loss. Yeah, it's kind of a price ceiling, a basic minimum price. In the case of sugarcane, you might have heard about the word fair and remunerative price, the FRP, that was in the news recently. So for most crops, MSP is given. Now, at that point of time, in the first 5 year plan, there was not much to do. How to support agriculture, because industry was also a focus. So government had a very confused kind of approach. Second 5 year plan, Mahalanobis plan, was completely on industrialization, planned industry, basic industry. First 5 year plan, agriculture, give more MSP, try to create better kind of irrigation for farmers, try to do more and more land reform. So land reform became the biggest intention of first 5 year plan. Stop zamindari, do land consolidation, give easy or allow for easy rentals, don't take too much rent from poor cultivators, transfer the land to cultivator. All of that was being done, but apart from that, nothing magical or nothing out of the box was being done. What happened? Despite, yes, very good, despite the first 5 year plan, not much could be achieved in agriculture. Now unfortunately comes 1964, Nehruji dies. If Nehruji dies in 1964, it leaves behind a major vacuum, the vacuum of a leadership. Now, a country who sees architect of India's economy in Nehru, socialistic planning, modernization of industries, all of that disappears because who will be the next leader? At that point of time, after some deliberation, it was Shastriji who came to power. Now, what is more interesting about Lal Bahadur Shastriji's tenure is that although it was a very short tenure, he could not even finish complete technically 2 years in office. He died before that. But whatever little time he spent in the government, he did revolutionary changes in India. So when Lal Bahadur Shastri ji came to power, there were many challenges that he inherited. He also inherited a very, you can say, messed up economy. On the one hand, Pakistan had already started doing some kind of attacks on India from the Run of Kutch area, and the Pakistan had started infiltrating into India, not only from the Kashmir area but also from Gujarat, Run of Kutch. In that case, the first challenge was in 1965 how to actually lead India in the Indo-Pak War. Recently, in 1962, the Nehru government had been backstabbed very badly by Chinese government. We know that Nehruji, from the very beginning, was somebody who believed in non-alignment movement. What is alignment? Following somebody. During the Cold War, the world was divided into two broad, yes, ideological groups. One became the Allies and one became, that was a Second World War legacy. So, following that model, it was the United Nations led NATO and USSR, Warsaw Pact. If the world is divided into these two groups and these two camps, it is very difficult right now for countries to not support any. But despite that, Nehruji, alongside certain like minded countries from Africa who were very underdeveloped, just like India, they were struggling. Recently independent countries, they were recently independent colonies, they were very, very poor and very, very backward. These were the people who decided not to join anybody. So ideologically, they wanted to become neutral. They said that we have many more challenges to face rather than support one party. Anyway, there are problems. For wheat and rice, India was depending on US. For arms, security, oil, gas, India was dependent on USSR. So how could we choose one? For a newly developing economy like India, both were equally important and therefore India stayed neutral. US did not like it. Obviously, there was a constant pressurization on India. US was also importing a lot of conditions on India. For example, on the one hand, if US was providing wheat and rice, US was putting difficult conditions on that. Why? With the intention of doing some kind of neo-colonialism. Not through military, but in terms of trade, they wanted to monopolize us so that India gets distance from USSR. So these kind of lot of geopolitical problems were going on. Nehruji spoke about NAM, non-alignment movement. In fact, there was a huge conference that was held in Indonesia. You might have heard about that, Bandung Conference. Under the Bandung Conference, formally NAM was created, supported by Yes. Asia, Africa, Yugoslavia. Hence, once this was done, because India had a difficult situation navigating between both the camps, yet the burden of a very poor economy, the one thing that Nehruji thought was okay, fine, even if we are neutral and non aligned, India had to bend because it was a security supplier. Also, there was one more reason why India bent. A very good question. Some people say India was bent towards USSR. It still is to Russia. Let me clarify this in 1 minute. Very good question. Now, before I answer, while he was focusing on NAM, he also wanted to focus on neighbor first policy. Why? Because it understood that without peaceful relations with neighbor, India cannot grow. In the light of this policy, India at that time, under the leadership of Nehruji and Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, had signed the Panchsheel. Panchsheel means Panch, five. The Panchsheel Agreement. The purpose of Panchsheel Agreement was to have a better coordination between India and China, very friendly relations between both. Hence, what happened? Lot of people were warning Nehruji at that time that don't trust on China. China has ambiguous intentions, whether it's Arunachal Pradesh, whether it's Aksai Chin. China, we cannot depend upon. But that time, Nehruji thought it's since we are already a part of non alignment, we have to support our neighbors. He did not immediately see that threat, and that's when China backstabbed. 1962, India was hardly prepared for it right now, and the Sino Indian War took place, war with China. China continued to expand in the area of northeast and from the Aksai Chin area. A lot of resource, a lot of military was deployed to fight the war and to make sure that China recedes and India faces no threat. So neutralizing this war was a very big dent on Indian economy. Imagine already there is no fund and then a war happens. All money, all Russian was going to finance the war. In that case, India was already deprived of its peace and problems. Plus, true, but to neutralize China, to stop China from entering and further penetrating inside, the kind of military sustenance and the kind of expenditure that was defense expenditure that suddenly came up was too much. So what happened as a result? Further economic demands increased while income was nothing. It was in this backdrop, poor economy hurt by one war, new independence, poverty and lack of food, that Shastriji suddenly inherited a country full of controversies. To his shock, next year itself, Pakistan showed its colors. 1965 Indo-Pak War happens. And this then became such an emergency situation that country had to be protected. So for Shastri ji, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. This was the biggest thing that came as a result of Shastri ji's intervention. He said, just like military is important, which will protect India's security and protect its citizens from war, farmer is important because it is farmer who feeds the Indian population. Without farmer, even a Jawan cannot fight. This manifested practically in his concept of promoting agriculture anyhow. And during Lal Bahadur Shastri's tenure and under his support, India committed to a new movement for revolutionizing our agriculture. Intention was to achieve self sufficiency in agriculture. Now, to the question that people say that India was bent towards USSR. Yes, because while Pakistan was attacking India, that was back in 1965. Let's understand that Pakistan was not a part of non-aligned movement. Pakistan was pro-US. At that time, when Pakistan had a pro-US stand, it was not at all aligned. And when it attacked India, India did not find the kind of support from US and China as expected. US and China did not provide any ideological support to India's cause in the war. The fact that it was Pakistani provocation. Plus, in fact, there were reports, yes, very well said. Plus, there were reports that Pakistan is getting majorly funded by US in terms of its arms and ammunitions. What would India do in this situation? India at that point of time signed a 20 years peace and friendship treaty with Russia, USSR. Hence, India became a close ally of the USSR in the wake of threat from the wake of threat from US Pakistan alliance. Even China was not a supporter. In fact, we had just come out of one war with China. So you see, in that light, so it was this treaty. Apart from that, the dependence for military. Until recently, when we talk about the BrahMos, India Russia have been doing a lot of joint ventures, snipers, missiles. Defense has been a big bilateral area. Similarly, oil and gas trade. In all that light, India definitely had an ideological bias towards Russia. In fact, recently, when Russia and Ukraine conflict was going on, a lot of countries called out India's diplomacy for being too much pro Russia. They said that India never abandoned or India never boycotted any plan of Russia's attack on Ukraine. Why? So you see, that's what our honorable foreign minister Jaishankar replied that, no country is answerable for whatever stand it takes. Agreed, we believe still in the policy of non-alignment, but nothing is more than your own security and safety of your people. So we will definitely ally towards people little bit. Who? Obviously, there will be a bias towards country which provide you with security and alliance. So that's how we have to see it. Okay. Now, in that light, US supports Pakistan because for US, Pakistan is a buffer country. For US, Pakistan is almost like a buffer country. It's a very good place uh, against its anti-Russia sentiment. Similarly, if you talk about Russia, why was Russia so keen on invading Afghanistan? The reason was they knew that if US becomes too strong in Pakistan, Afghanistan, the buffer between both the countries will finish. What happens then? War becomes direct. So these are areas that are utilized by bigger countries in their own intentions. You see, that's the main purpose. Indo-US relationship is primarily economic. Plus, in the wake of Chinese aggression, today it has been redefined. When China has been behaving not only in a very, very aggressive way with India, but also with other countries like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, South China Sea is so unstable due to China's policies. Plus, China's ideological, you can say, support to Russia today. The fact that even Putin government supports China in many of its initiatives. Having said that, a, today Indo-US partnership is also a result of that insecurity of Chinese aggression. For example, Quad. What is Quad? India, US, Japan, and uh, Australia. Why are they becoming so strong today? The reason is obviously anti-China stand. So there are many considerations, not one. And also I'll tell you something very interesting. People feel that India, China are ideological enemies. Yes, they are. But do you understand that today China is also one of the largest bilateral trade partner to India? Do we understand that today China is one of the largest semiconductor and pharmaceutical supplier to India? So in the kind of world we are living in, it's very complex. In this situation, enemies do not mean enemies in everything. Unless a full blown war happens, like in the case of Gaza and Israel Palestine, or a full blown war like Azerbaijan Armenia or Russia Ukraine, that's a different scenario. Otherwise, what happens? There are areas of cooperation. Today's international relations are not about only geopolitics, they are multidimensional. There is economic consideration, trade is there, military exchange is there, naval exercise is there, plus there is geopolitical thing, plus there is also a consideration that people from one country live everywhere across the world. So you see, it is way more complex today. So when you want to balance your own policy, you have to be very, very diplomatic there. So agreed, India, Russia do share a kind of ideological alliance, but also since India and China are antagonistic, India will take US side when it comes to anti-China stand. When it comes to pro-Pakistan stand, then that is a different thing altogether. Again, because of the high bilateral trade, a massive bilateral trade, plus also to make UN more representative. The fact that today also World Trade Organization, United Nations are very biased towards developed countries. So Asian countries having a power in UNSC is a critical thing. It's a critical thing because otherwise the world is always governed by few countries which have veto power. There is no equality. So rising economies also need more political representation in international bodies to make policies fair. For example, if India bans rice export, WTO issues a notice. If India says, I will give MSP to my farmers, WTO issues a notice. Similar thing is not done when US is doing, Russia is doing, Japan is doing. See, there is always a bias there also. Yeah. Now, coming a little bit from IR and going back to economics. So, Green Revolution, a very good question, was yes, green only in name. I agree. Why was it only green in name? It was a commitment to improve agriculture output, agriculture productivity, specifically in cereal crops like rice, wheat, pulses. And another intention was to stop getting dependent on imports and achieve self-sufficiency, to increase the food production capacity, or a massive growth of wheat and rice. Right? Now, this began through the idea of an American agriculture scientist known as Norman Ernest Borlaug. Norman Borlaug. Normally we call him that. He was also referred to as, therefore, the father of Green Revolution. Now, initially, Green Revolution had seen huge success in South America. When it was implemented, when all the policies were implemented, Mexico saw a huge result. With that inspiration, India, that was already reeling under multiple famines, poor agriculture productivity, hunger and starvation, malnourishment, saw Green Revolution as a band-aid solution. Now, when you ask me that, ma'am, why was Green Revolution only green in name? Because it was not a permanent solution to India's problems. It was a band-aid solution. When you put a band-aid, nothing cures. It only protects it from further devastation. It's a very temporary solution, not a deeper solution, like a painkiller, right? It doesn't solve the root problem. So Green Revolution was successful in India, but partially. Plus, Green Revolution, please understand there is a difference between two things, okay? Hunger and hidden hunger. These are very different things. In detail, we will go in social justice. What is hunger? Lack of calorie intake. When somebody is having no food to eat and they die because calories are not coming, that's called hunger. It's lethal. People die because of that. There is something that's known as hidden hunger. This is also known as malnourishment or malnutrition. Here, you are not hungry. You get calories. Nicely, you are eating calories. For example, if an urban person needs 2,100 calories per day, you are getting that. But these are poor quality calories. Maybe you are getting them only from carbohydrates. Hence, you can have iron deficiency. 57% Indian women, as per National Family Health Survey 2019, are anemic. They have no enough iron or folic acid in the blood. Right? Similarly, majority of Indian children are stunted or wasted. Stunted, low height, wasted, low birth weight. Yeah? So what is happening? They are not eating anything properly. So therefore, hidden hunger is when you are not hungry, but you lack nutrition. You are not having the right kind of food. Poverty is the biggest cause of malnourishment, and then the next cause would be lack of awareness, perhaps. But poverty and lack of availability, access, and lack of access is the biggest cause of malnourishment. Now, please understand, Green Revolution was created to solve India's hunger problem, which it did successfully. So, Green Revolution has helped us in stopping hunger. But Green Revolution, while it was fighting hunger, has created a massive problem of hidden hunger in India. That's the biggest failure of Green Revolution in terms of human health and human capital. The next we will talk about later, but first understand what happened in Green Revolution. As I said, multiple famines and war had pushed down India's food grain production from 89.4 million ton in 1965 to merely 72 million ton in 1966 in just 1 year. So what happened in the Green Revolution? In Green Revolution, yes, definitely it is. Majority of farmer suicides in India started after Green Revolution only. It was a Pandora box. A Pandora box is a box which you open and it never gets closed. It is full of problems. Green Revolution was a Pandora box. One good thing happened: hunger declined. But after that, only cancer happened, diabetes happened, heart attack happened, TB happened, thyroid happened, infertility happened, poverty happened, inequality happened, soil became toxic, underground water became toxic, climate change happened. All of that has happened because of Green Revolution. It's only green India. Agreed. Why? We needed Green Revolution because we were dependent on US for exports, but US was trying to behave like an imperialistic society. US imposed a law on us, on India, known as PL 480. Under the law, any food item that was being imported from US to India was subject to India's saying yes to US's foreign policies and trade policies. There was no equality in this trade because it was a trade of dependence, and hence we were trying to become like a new colony. Now, how interesting. It reminds me nothing comes for free in life. You agree? There is no free lunch. Back in 1965, we needed Green Revolution because US was putting conditions on food. Similarly, in 1991, people call this LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. It's not like that. It is known as structural adjustment program. More in social justice, of course. SAP. This happened. We think that we were doing liberalization, globalization. No. We were doing another kind of colonialism, neo-colonialism this time. Countries like America and Europe, the European countries, they had imposed a SAP on us in the name of LPG. So everything comes at a cost. Nothing comes for free. Now that US was trying to behave like that, we needed a revolution, and hence it was decided by an Indian advisor to Indian government, economic advisor, sorry, known by Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, very, very famous. Now recently he was in news also. True, true. I'll teach you something very interesting here. When you write answers in UPSC and you say that something has a bad effect, yeah, he was a Nobel Prize winner, something has a bad effect, don't say it's had a bad effect. It is known as a latent effect or a latent impact. You know what is this? When you do something for good, but without knowing, it has very bad impact. But you don't plan it, it happens. It is known as latent effect of something. So green revolution has a very bad latent impact on India, very poor latent impact. Okay, so now Ford Foundation collaborated with Indian government, and then they started creating Green Revolution. What is Green Revolution? As the name says, under Green Revolution, certain conditions were done. For example, we were using very, very high quality, extremely productive seeds. These seeds are known as high yielding varieties, HYV. Why? Because the production output is very high per hectare, double of the native crop. So these were imported in India. Similarly, latest technology of farming in terms of harvesting, growing, grinding, cropping, latest machinery technology was introduced in India. Government provided this to farmers, or rather, government. I'll tell you what happened. Now, scientific methods of farming. For example, you use that kind of intercropping methods or that kind of production methods which give you longest possible result in terms of food output. Depend on fertilizer. The more artificial fertilizer you use, the better food will come. More food will come. Similarly, please use pesticide. Kill all the germs. Otherwise, food insecurity happens, right? Similarly, consolidation of land holding. This we have already discussed. How farmers were told that if you have small, small plots of land, because of land fragmentation, joint family system, inheritance, government will give you one big plot instead of small, bigger plots. Exchange scheme. This will help you in doing monocropping. Monocropping means growing one kind of crop in the land so that more produce is coming out. Apart from that, use of better machinery, and similarly, the biggest aspect of green revolution, all these are still small. The biggest aspect is MSP, minimum support price. The government tells the farmers that if you only, now this is where green revolution has caused cancer in India. Listen how. And malnourishment. Farmers were told that if you only grow rice, wheat, pulse, sugarcane, you will get MSP from us. So what happens now? Think what happens. Think. India before Green Revolution was the land of millet. Today, 2023 was the International Year of Millet. Why? Because we are fed up of cancers and itch and iron deficiency and malnourishment and all sort of problems. We are tired now. The world has had enough of heart attack and diabetes. India is the capital of that. So therefore, we need healthy food. Going back to organic farming, going back to millets. You see how interesting it is. We are going back to millets, but before Green Revolution, we were only having millets, right? Population was healthy. One thing, millets are climate friendly. They need less water and they are very healthy because they have fiber. They do not use any insecticide, any pesticide. They don't need it. They are adapters to climate. Third thing, millets are cheaper. Millets are healthier. They have a very high iron content. They don't need any artificial fortification. People were healthy in India. Comes Green Revolution. Government says we will give you MSP only on certain food products which you have to grow. That started. Now what will happen? Earlier farmers were growing millets. They stopped it. Why did they stop? Because they are not getting MSP on it, right? You will only grow something that you get profit on. MSP is a guarantee price. You will grow it. So farmers all over the India, specifically in the areas of Punjab, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, this is where Green Revolution saw highest success. Why? Fertile soil. Second, rich farm holdings. Green Revolution helped rich farmers more than poor farmers. Why? Because poor farmers had no money to afford high yielding variety. If once they buy, next time how will they buy? Poor farmers has a small land. Rich farmer has a big land. More produce will come. Poor farmer cannot buy machine, rich farmer can. Poor farmer cannot stop growing millets and vegetables because he has to fill his stomach. Rich farmer can. He can buy food. You see, there is a difference. Plus, if you stop growing millets and you only grow imported variety of HIV, that too with a high degree of chemical fertilizer and chemical medicine, what are you trying to do? One thing, you are only growing carbohydrate. Please understand. This is where malnutrition starts. Millets were giving you iron, they were giving you protein, they were giving you complex carb. What is rice and wheat? It's nonsense. Rice and wheat is giving you plain carb. Even if wheat gives you little complex carb, only eating rice and only eating things like sugarcane, what will it do to you? It will make a population which demands more rice and wheat. Now, you won't believe me, but before Green Revolution, average consumption of India was so less for rice and wheat. It was very high for bajra. It was very high for maize. It was very, very high for kutki, for ragi. After Green Revolution, everything stopped, and suddenly the demand of consumer went to rice and wheat. One thing, of course, is westernization. You are inspired by Western countries to eat fast food. That's different. Another thing is, if farmer is only growing rice and wheat, obviously you will get it more cheap. If no farmer is growing millet, obviously first supply is less, and second it is expensive because it is very less. So majority of middle class Indians started eating carbohydrate in the form of rice. What happens? What happens when you eat only carbohydrate? What happens when you eat only carbohydrate? Insulin resistance. Body is not meant to have. Yeah, exactly. Diabetes. Insulin resistance, diabetes. India is the diabetic capital of the world. Type 2 diabetes. There is a reason. Obesity, cardiovascular disease, mental problems, lack of iron. Where will you get iron in rice, sugar, wheat? Where are you getting protein? Stunted population, protein deficiency, lack of growth, poor fertility among women, increase in infant mortality, increase in maternal mortality. Today things have improved. A lot of pulses are getting. Kerala was the first state to get MSP on vegetables. Today the government is also talking about giving MSPs on millets now, because today the government is futuristic. It feels that yes, we have a problem. Back then, what could government also do? The immediate need was hungry people. When somebody is dying with hunger, obviously we will not think about carb and protein. We will think of giving them food and making them alive, right? Making them live. That resulted in this problem. It reversed our dietary patterns all over the country, and today we have inherited so many diseases because of that. Now, this is one aspect of it, giving MSP on rice and wheat and consuming rice and wheat. Another very nasty side effect of this was that farmers were using a high degree of chemical pesticide, and farmers were using a very, very high degree of fertilizer and pesticide. What happened as a result of that? As a result of that, underground water got contaminated. Today, we know that groundwater became metallic, as somebody just said, right? Bromide, chromium, all these things got laid in underground water. Soil became alkaline. What is alkalinity of soil? Salt. Soil becomes salty, it becomes infertile. You can't grow anything on it. Why? Because the more fertilizer you put, it creates a coat. It creates a coat on the land. Then what happens? Through capillary action, all the underground salt in the soil, it starts coming up, and then entire soil becomes eventually salty. So what happens? Loss of fertility, less food production in the long run, depending on foreign variety of food. What does it do to your local variety? Native crops start disappearing from the continent. They die. They die. Exactly. Arsenic water in West Bengal, severe metal poisoning. Punjab, Haryana, capital of cancer in India. Why this cancer? Complete change of bodies, metabolism, complete change of body's cell division cycle. Now, why would this happen? Because you are predisposing yourself to so much contamination of metals, toxic metals, right? So this is one latent aspect of Green Revolution. Now, let alone it had a very poor health impact because of change and dietary consumption of high carbohydrate, but also because yes, you are getting sick because you're eating toxic metal. Third biggest problem is it will spoil food supply in the long run. It's a temporary solution. So your local crops will die. And high yielding varieties are also high maintenance varieties. The more you grow high yielding variety, the more you need to pamper them with a high expensive fertilizer and chemical pesticide dose. How much pesticide will you use? There is a limit to it. Soil cannot take it beyond a certain limit. Underground water is metallic, soil is metallic. Now, how much will you use? Plus, economic imbalances. Certain states like Punjab, Haryana, which had huge land holding among rich farmers, which had the right kind of soil, were the basic beneficiaries of green revolution. But then what about states which had a poor soil altogether, where farmers were having very small portions of land, where they were very, very poor? They could not buy any input of green revolution, and hence economic disparity increased. The rich farmers kept on becoming richer and the poor farmers kept on becoming poor. Yes, absolutely. Green revolution led to an increase in monoculture. What is monoculture? As I said, growing only one crop at a time in a piece of land. Before green revolution, farmers were doing mixed farming or poly farming. Polycropping or mixed farming happens when you grow 2 to 3 different type of crops in the same soil at the same time. For example, one cereal crop and then legume. This legume will create protein enrichment in the soil through the atmospheric nitrogen fixation. Soil is constantly getting fertile. It's a natural way of inducing soil fertility. This has finished. Why? Because today you are doing monocropping. Once you do monocropping, after 5 6 years, your soil becomes bad. It becomes alkaline. What will you do now? So you see, these are certain problems of green revolution. They are way more negative than they are positive. It was therefore only green in name. What about the positive effects? Yes, the biggest one more thing about negative effect. Now, today the Indian government feels that because we are only eating majorly rice and wheat and pulses, the government is now trying to provide us food fortification as a quick fix solution recommended by World Health Organization. You grow rice, but newer varieties of rice, such as HD varieties of wheat and rice, which have a automatic fortification. They are fortified with chemicals which will provide human iron, protein, and vitamin. For example, vitamin D fortified rice, iron fortified rice. Brown rice is not fortified. It's brown rice is rice only, but its outer shell is not removed. So it is rich in vitamin B12. Refined rice is when you completely process that rice and sell it. For example, in the Asian countries, the demand for white rice is very high. It's not good for health, but it's very, very high. India stopped the supply of white rice. So India was selling brown rice to Vietnam. So Vietnam further polished it, made it white rice, and then started exporting it. Ganga Kaveri, Hajar Das, all these are very good solutions. Options of fortified foods. But are they helpful? Medical reaction is not very positive. According to Indian Medical Association, fortified food does not get absorbed in the body very well. It doesn't work like food. Second thing is it's very expensive to afford. Third, it comes with a danger of over fortification. Sometimes too much vitamin or too much fortified chemical goes in the body, further creating more side effects. So you see, it is not a permanent solution. Today, the government is talking about organic farming in the name of Poshan Vatika. Poshan Vatika means Vatika is a garden in Hindi. Poshan is nutrition. Government is encouraging schools to grow their own organic kitchen gardens where farmers and people will come and try to grow as many local crops naturally. That is a very important solution. Yeah. Plus, all these crops are water intensive. Now, we all know that Green Revolution improved basmati is white rice. It's a highly refined white rice. Huge demand in India and Asia, but it's not very healthy for the body. It doesn't give you as much nourishment as it should. Now, rice. For example, rice was majorly promoted by Green Revolution. But do you know that rice or paddy is also the single biggest source of climate pollution? The climate footprint of rice is so big. Rice is associated with methane and carbon dioxide release in the environment. It is very unfriendly. Similarly, pulses. Green Revolution gave importance to pulses. Pulses responsible for a major stubble burning in India. And you all know what stubble burning does in Haryana and Punjab. Every year, North New Delhi is not able to breathe in the winter season when fog mixes with stubble burning. Why is stubble getting burnt? Green Revolution. Thank you, Green Revolution. Right. There are certain positives also. Not everything is bad. Agriculture production increased by more than 3 times. So India became self-sufficient. Absolutely. India was less dependent on imports. Capitalistic farming, privatization of agriculture started. With Green Revolution, when the production was very, very high, private companies took over farming. For example, today you buy so many products like, I can't name anyone ethically, but for example, you want to buy rice, there are brands, not only farmers, but branding is also done. Farmers sometimes sell to multinational companies. Multinational companies then create brands on wheat and rice. We all buy those brands. So privatization in agriculture has started. Again, this is leading to more and more economic disparity, with poor people affording the cheapest quality of food, rich people having an access to the highest quality of organic food. You know. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is called a mind which is full of social studies and no science. Sorry, thanks for correcting me. Also, carbon monoxide. I'm not going to write. Yeah, it's carbon monoxide only. Now, yeah, like India Gate, Basmati rice, HMT, Saffola. There are multiple number of brands. Foreign brands are coming in India. So main thing is again, it's a disparity of access. Similarly, as you know, few states only got benefited with Green Revolution, like Punjab, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, primarily. What about other? Not really. They were not so benefited. So prosperity of farmers also led to poverty among farmers. Now, you know that farmers who were left with small land, farmers who could not afford any input for green revolution, what happened to them? Productivity kept on declining. They became consumers rather than producers of food. You see how sad it is. Maharashtra is more known for, of course, sugarcane, but primarily the contribution was more towards cash crops. So green revolution has benefited food crops more. So farmers became consumers, poor farmers, rather than producers of food because they could not grow enough, right? Yeah. Fertilizer cost, all of that increased. So it was both way damage. MSP is going on wrong product, so wrong product will be grown and then it will be available, it will be consumed, and then it will lead to health problem, environmental problem. You see, people always feel that human health and environmental health are different things, but today we believe in the integrative health approach of the World Health Organization, and we must believe that environmental and human health are deeply interrelated. So, my dear, cash crops are crops which are not eaten. They are technically commercial crops. They are sold in the market like cotton, jute, peanut. How much peanut will you eat? Sugarcane. Maharashtra, Karnataka, black soil areas, they are very famous for peanut, groundnut, and cotton in particular. Similarly, Jharkhand, Bengal, these areas, Bihar, are very well known, Madhya Pradesh, very well known for their jute, right? A food crop is when you grow food, rice, wheat, or millet, or all of those pulses, yeah, for commercial uses, yes. So now per capita net availability of food went up. Similarly, agriculture became a very profitable enterprise. Many new people, many young people started taking up agriculture. Farmers could improve their income, at least rich farmers. Emergence of rural agriculture middle class, yes. Initially, yeah, good impacts, Pilis. Definitely. All crops are water intensive somewhere. Some are very, very water intensive. Like cotton could also be water intensive, but rice is majorly water intensive. Yes, absolutely. Farmer suicide is a major problem now. You must understand also that the ongoing farmer protest is happening. This one, the phase two, is more political. But let's remember the phase one that happened 1 or 2 years back. So their farmers were technically rebelling against three farm laws that they were not happy about. So one of those laws was allowing multinationals to commercialize agriculture. So when multinational companies and private companies become like a middleman, a broker, who will take raw food from the farmer and sell in the market, then farmers always suffer. It's like creating a neo version of zamindari. That farmers are selling it to private players who will obviously exploit them. Typically, farmers should have a direct say. Now, today in government, because of government welfare and some NGOs, we are having organic mandis where farmers are directly coming and farmer markets are being held. But that's very rare. Technically, it's being done through private channels. So farmers are not happy with that. It leads to deprivation overall. So these are certain positive impacts that we already discussed. Some are negative, some are positive. Negative impacts we already spoke about: health, poverty, ecological crisis, income gap, polarization, regional. Regionalism is also a result of that. Why? Because some areas are getting a lot of development, others are deprived. So why? Where there is more food production, they will obviously grow better, they will have more industrialization, while others will not have the same amount. So typically, all these are things that we speak about. And that's it on Green Revolution. Consumerism means when society is completely dependent on too much consumption, buying from the market, market oriented. For example, if I had the capacity to grow my own food, if I was a farmer, I'm a producer of food. But if I live in city and I can't grow my food, obviously I have to eat. So I will buy from outside. Then I become consumer. I'm consuming. Market oriented person. When you start buying everything, that too in too much quantity, it becomes consumeristic culture, right? Okay. True, true. That's a very big distress. Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet of you. No, rice needs more water than cotton. Nowadays, we are talking about Kasturi cotton, another new variety of cotton. So always remember, the more modification you do, plus in between there was biogenetic, that genetic modification, BT cotton, to fight against the bollworm cotton disease, the bacterial disease. So such cottons will require more water. Obviously, they are more water intensive. I did show you PYQs, my dear, on the first class. If you want, I'll repeat them. I'll repeat them tomorrow. I'll repeat them tomorrow for you. Okay. So tomorrow we will talk about official language. Tomorrow we will talk about what was that important topic that we have not discussed? I think NAM, yes, a little bit about India's politics, and there's one more very important topic actually. I'll show you tomorrow. Prelims, yeah. Prelims questions can come so direct. For example, they can ask you about MS Swaminathan, they can ask you about Ford Foundation and Green Revolution, they can ask you about, say, for example, MSP or sugarcane, fair and remunerative price. They can talk about vegetables being given MSP in Kerala. They can, so see, knowledge will always be for means. Somebody is just testing it, small, small bits, then it becomes prelims. None is tomorrow. Factual questions. Yeah. Tomorrow, last class for post independence. We'll talk about it tomorrow. How to write better answers. Definitely, we should learn from countries like Israel, at least. They have a desalinization plant, imagine. So, somebody who can use seawater by desalinization, although it has a carbon footprint, but still. So, obviously, it is a very hardworking country, not only in terms of science and technology, but also agriculturally. Netherlands, Holland, they've created agriculture out of seawater. So we can learn, but not everything we can learn. Why? Because population is a big thing, right? India's population is so high that most of the times other countries have a population which is less than population of one state in India. So again, it becomes very difficult, to copy the same model. We can get inspired by that, but to bring it to practice could be very tough. This coupled by NCERT, grade 12th book, which I mentioned on the first day of the lecture, Post Independence India, is enough. Is enough. But if you have chosen history or polity as your optional, then there is another book called India After Gandhi. Then you should read that also. Otherwise, no need. Yeah. Okay. Post independence is completely hodgepodge of economics, modern history, social justice, and sometimes even geography. That's why people don't give it so much importance. But I think it's the base of everything. It's like a time period. Yeah. Fine, then I'll take your leave. I talk very much. By the way, I can do gossip for 5 hours also, 6 hours also. I am non-stop. Go and study. Unnecessarily now we are gossiping. After post independence, we can obviously prelims will be the priority, but we will talk about social justice. Of course, reading comprehension is there, compulsory language is there, maybe an essay class is there. Even I don't know the schedule. I'll ask and probably let you know. Sure, sure. I'll definitely get back. Tomorrow I have to take up a YouTube session, news analysis. So give me time till tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll definitely reply to the mail. Okay. Thank you so much for the lovely lecture. See you soon tomorrow with the last lecture on post independence period. Take care and have a happy week ahead. All the best.